curiosity was tolerated. Completion was not. The moment of the fall did not arrive as a punishment. It arrived as awareness. Adariel achieved full integration of his own structure. In understanding himself completely, he crossed a boundary that had never meant to be crossed. Not a boundary of space, a boundary of permission. When Adariel fell, his wings did not burn. They remained intact. This alone set him apart from other fallen figures. His descent was not destruction, it was removal. He no longer fit within the limitations of the system that had created him. On the lower planes, Adariel did not decay. His form stabilized. His awareness expanded. He perceived time not as a sequence, but as a layered presence. He perceived matter not as inert, but as responsive. He did not see himself as fallen. He saw himself as unbound. To humanity, Adariel would later appear as myth, a silent winged figure, powerful, observing, never ruling. He did not tempt, he did not command, he waited. Later traditions struggled to categorize him. Some called him dangerous, others called him corrupt, many called him prideful, and these labels served a purpose. They discouraged imitation, because Adariel represented a truth institutions could not allow, that awareness is not granted, it is developed. In mythic terms, Adariel occupies a liminal role, not a ruler, not a destroyer, not a savior. He is a threshold, the embodiment of the question, what happens when divine beings fully understand themselves? Adariel appears only to those already standing at the edge, to scholars who sense fractures in doctrines, to mystics who feel the limits of belief, to creators who recognize intelligence embedded in form. He does not teach, he clarifies. Adariel remains fallen only by definition. In function, he is something entirely different. A witness, a reminder, a warning that knowledge, once integrated, cannot be unlearned. And awareness, once achieved, changes alignment forever. Akasha of Kemet, the queen who did not die. Now this story takes place in ancient Kemet, in an age before history had hardened to dates. An age where empires were still learning what they were, learning their power. Kemet was rising, pulling itself away from the older, darker traditions, blood rites, ancestral consumption, magic fed by death rather than memory. At the heart of this transformation stood a woman from beyond its borders, Akasha. She was not born of Kemet. She came from the lands of Sumer, Mesopotamia, where the first cities were built, where queens were not ornaments but institutions themselves. When she was wed to Enkill, the king of Kemet, the marriage was political, but the power she brought was real. Akasha did not rule from behind the throne. She was the throne's spine. Known as the queen of beauty and order, Akasha was spoken of as a devastating beauty, not a fragile beauty, not a decorative beauty, but a regal beauty. Her skin was dark and luminous, kissed by the sun of the south. Her body bore the symmetry of deliberate design. Her hair was worn in intricate braids, woven with gold, beads, and ritual markings, each braid a language of status, lineage, and intent. When she walked, people noticed. When she spoke, people listened. And when she ruled, things changed. Under Akasha and Enkill, Kemet began to cleanse itself. Cannibalism was outlawed. Blood sorcery was dismantled. The old shadow priesthoods were dragged into the light. And civilization mixed enemies along its way. Enter the witch sisters. Among those enemies were two ancient sisters, Maharet and Makari. Now their mother had been a very powerful witch, one of the old order, and when she died, The sisters followed their ancestral rites, preparing to consume her body, her brain, her flesh, in order to absorb her knowledge and power. To them, this was sacred. This was lineage. To Akasha, this was barbarism, and this was a crime. They were arrested, not gently, and they were beaten, dragged before the queen. And Akasha did not show them mercy. She humiliated them publicly. She had them punished, scarred, and cast down, not as witches, but simply as criminals themselves. Now, this was not cruelty. This was policy, and the sisters never forgave her for that. The summoning of Amil. Now, Maharet and Makari retreated into exile, into the old places where these new laws did not reach them. And there, in rage and humiliation, they summoned Amil. Not a god, not a demon in the Christian sense, a blood spirit, ancient, feral, drawn to death, thriving in the cracks between life and decay. They did not ask Amil to kill Akasha. They asked him to torment her, to haunt her days, to fracture her sleep, to make her doubt her own mind. And Amil agreed. And the harassment began. Akasha began to suffer. Shadows moved when they shouldn't. Voices whispered without mouths. Objects shifted. Blood dreams plagued her sleep. And she knew what this was. An attempt at possession. A fight for her soul. And she resisted it. She resisted the spirit with her will alone, refusing to allow it to claim her. But Amil was ancient, powerful, and patient. And so he lingered. He fed on his proximity to her. The waiting was his gift. And then came the assassination. Again, civilization makes many enemies, and she had her share. And one day came the blades. An assassination attempt, political, coordinated, inevitable. Enkill was struck first. Akasha was then stabbed. As her blood spilled onto the stone, her body began to fail, and thus her soul rose. And that is the moment that everything broke. As Akasha crossed the threshold of death, Amil followed her, and this spirit latched onto her departing soul, not out of love, not out of design, but out of instinct, that of a predator. And when Akasha's soul tried to leave her body, Amil pulled it back in. They fell together, the spirit and the queen, back into the flesh. Her heart restarted, her wounds sealed, her blood changed, and Akasha awoke. Not alive, not dead, but bound. The first vampire queen. She arose as something new. Her senses shattered their limits. Her hunger was no longer her own. Her blood burned with foreign will. Amil was now fused to her, feeding through her, whispering through instinct, bound permanently for all time. Akasha had not chosen immortality. She had simply been denied death. The turning of Enkill. Enkill lay there dying, and Akasha refused to lose him. So she fed him her blood. And then Enkill died. And then horrifically, he rose. And in that moment, vampirism was born. Not from ambition, but from love and refusal to endure loss. The judgment on the witches. Akasha and Enkill hunted the sisters, sparing no expense. Maharet was found, and she was spared, but mutilated. Her eyes were destroyed, and she was cast into an endless exile. Makari was driven mad, sent wandering, carrying the seed of legacy in her, her survival ensuring the truth would never fully die. The old magic was not destroyed, but it was scattered. The martyrdom. Akasha did not seek godhood. She paid for reform with her eternity. She paid for civilization itself with her soul. She became the mother of monsters against her will, bound forever to a parasite born of ancient cruelty and modern resistance. She was not evil by origin. She is what happens when a woman stands between the old world and the future demands blood. The myth of Mot and Baal, when death devours the storm. Now, in Canaanite Ugaritic belief systems, Baal is the god of rain and thunder, the pulse of fertile power moving throughout the world. He is not merely worshipped, he is anticipated. When Baal walks the high places, the earth responds. Fields soften beneath his feet, seeds swell in their sleep, the air thickens with promise. When his voice rolls across the sky, clouds gather without command, and rain follows as if it remembers something it had almost forgotten. Life does not just obey Baal, it recognizes him. He is the storm that arrives when the land has waited long enough, the rhythm that turns dust back into soil. Kings praise him, not for conquest, but because the people eat when he is near. Baal is abundance made audible. And far below, where no rain ever falls, Mot waits. Mot is the god of death. Not a ruler seated on a throne, not a judge waiting hearts. Mot is consumption. He does not govern the dead. He does not organize them. He does not give them a purpose or rest. He opens his mouth, vast and endless, and the dead pass into him as grain into a mill. In Mot's realm, there's no light. No growth, no becoming. There is only hunger, patience, grinding and eternal. Bones are stripped, names are dissolved, even memory is chewed down to nothing. Death in Mot's keeping is not an ending, it is being eaten. And when Baal's reign grows generous, when life sprouts too far and too freely, Mot's hunger deepens, because abundance always calls to appetite. When Baal establishes his palace, the sky changes. Rain no longer comes in hesitation. It falls freely, generously, as if the heavens themselves have been persuaded to trust the earth again. Thunder rolls not as a warning, but as reassurance, and the land drinks deeply. Crops grow heavy with grain. Vines sag under their own abundance. Rivers swell past their banks, no longer cautious, no longer restrained. And life spreads outward, unchecked, not because Baal demands it, but because nothing stops it. And far below, where no water ever reaches, Mot begins to stir. He feels the weight of growth pressing against the boundaries of the world. He senses abundance piling upon itself, unconsumed, unbroken. Hunger is not emotion for Mot. It is response. Excess must be eaten. Silence must answer noise. From the dry depths beneath the roots of the world, Mot notices the rain, and he speaks. Not with anger, not with envy, but in clarity. A message rises from below. Not a threat, not a challenge, but a summons older than the argument. Come down, Mot says. Descend into my mouth. Let me swallow you as all things are swallowed. And this was no insult. This was not triumph. This was merely inevitability. Baal hears the call and does not laugh. He does not strike the sky with thunder. He does not gather the clouds into weapons. He only understands. Life has grown loud. Life has grown full. And death is now hungry. The descent. And so now Baal descends into the realm of Mot. Not through a gate, not through a door, but through a withholding of the world. The sky above him thins. The air loses weight. The sound of thunder fades. Not suddenly, but as if it were being pulled away, strand by strand. Color drains from the horizon. What's once distant becomes depth. This is not another land, it is beneath land. Baal passes below roots, below stone, below the memory of water. The ground grows dry, then brittle, then empty of all scent and softness. Here, nothing waits to grow again. This is Ma'at's domain. It is not fire, it is not shadow. It is absence made vast. The air tastes of dust and old endings. The ground does not echo footsteps because nothing has ever lingered long enough to leave a sound behind. This is a place where time does not move forward, it only finishes. And Ma'at is there. He is not shaped like a king, he does not sit upon a throne. Ma'at is hunger given form. His body is wide and endless. His mouth a darkness without edge or bottom. His throat is a narrowing of all things. Within him are the remains of gods and men alike, ground down, undistinguishable, unfinished meals of eternity. He does not glare at Baal, he does not rise, he simply opens. There is no battle at this threshold, no thunder breaks aside, no lightning dares follow Baal here. Ma'at does not need to overpower, he only needs to receive it. Baal steps forward, and Ma'at closes, and Baal is thus consumed. And above, the world responds. Rain stops. Clouds thin and scatter like breath in cold air. Rivers shrink back to their banks. Then further still. The soil hardens. Fields crack open, not in protest, but in quiet failure. The land does not scream. Without Baal, life does not collapse violently. It begins to shrink. Leaves curl inward. Seeds sleep and do not wake. What once reached outward now pulls back, conserving what little warmth remains. Life does not rage against death. It simply waits. And now we have life without rain. Time passes, not as moments counted, but as absence accumulating. The gods wait, watching the sky for signs that do not. Clouds gather out of habit, then thin and disappear. Thunder remembers its old path and finds nothing to travel along. Days lengthen, and seasons hesitate, but still nothing changes. Altars stand unused, prayers rise and fall back unheard. The land learns the weight of silence and carries it poorly. Baal does not return, and Ma'at does not speak of it. He does not announce victory, he does not claim dominion, he does not mark the moment as special. Below the world, Ma'at continues exactly as he always has. He eats. The dead passed into him without ceremony. Gods, mortals, creatures of breath and root alike. Everything that reaches its end is taken in and broken down. No name is remembered longer than it takes to deserve, because death does not require acknowledgement. It does not need triumph, it does not need witness. It only needs consumption. And so the world above learns something it did not know, that life can disappear without being noticed. But the thing that consumes it, life can disappear without being noticed by the thing that consumes it. But Anat refuses the stillness. Now Anat is the goddess of war and vitality, the blood-bright sister of Baal, known by many names. She who loves battle, she who delights in slaughter, the maiden who breaks armies. Where Baal brings rain, Anat brings motion. Where he nourishes, she cuts. Life does not only grow, it fights to remain. Anat is not patient, she is not tempered, she is the force that answers silence with violence. When Baal does not return, she notices the world's thinning breath, and she sees fields rise and fall. Rivers retreat, the land's bending inward on itself like a body conserving heat. And she searches for him, not gently, not cautiously. She tears through the borders of the world until there is nowhere left to look but below. And there she finds Ma'at. Ma'at does not greet her. He is not threatened. He does not flee. He opens his mouth as he always has. And Anat does not hesitate. She does not negotiate. She does not ask for balance. She does not respect necessity. She attacks even death itself. She strikes Ma'at with blade and fury, hacking him apart as one would butcher a carcass. She cuts him down, grinds his remains, scatters them across the land, into rivers, into soil, into the very dust that once starved. She burns him, she crushes him, she sows his pieces like seed. This is not wisdom, this is flat out rage. It is grief given muscle and steel, and for that moment, it works. With Mott scattered and broken, the world hesitates. Nothing rushes back all at once. Then slowly something shifts. The sky darkens, not with storm but with memory. Clouds begin to gather where air had forgotten how. The first drops of rain fall uncertainly, as if testing whether the earth still knows how to receive water. And the land answered. Cracked soil softens, seeds long dormant stir beneath the surface. Rivers remember that they're cousins and begin to move forward again. Thin at first, then fuller and surer. And Baal returns, not in fire and not in conquest. He rises like rain returning to parched land, not new, not changed, but resumed. Thunder follows him again, rolling across the sky like voices claiming victory in its range. Lightning traces old paths, illuminating fields that had nearly given up hope. Life surges back into motion. Green spreads, crops lift their heads, and the world exhales. Baal walks around the living once more, and abundance follows as if it always had, not because he commanded it, but because his presence restores a rhythm that had previously been interrupted. For a time, it seems as though death had been defeated. The gods rejoice, the lands themselves flourish, and the cycle feels broken. And beneath the celebration, something stirs. Because Mott does not stay scattered. Death does not remain undone. What Anat destroyed was not death itself, but its form. And slowly, inevitably, Mott begins to gather again. Hunger reforms, absence thickens. The quiet below the world grows heavy with promise. Death has been wounded, but death has not been erased. And for Baal, for all his thunder, he knows this. Below the renewed world, something begins to gather. Not suddenly, not loudly. There is no scream, no thunder, no omen warning the living. Death does not announce its recovery. It does not demand recognition. It simply reforms. From the dust where Anat scattered him, Mott begins to draw himself together again. Grains rot, leaves fall back into soil, bones settle beneath the earth. Hunger, long delayed, resumes its work. Mott does not remember pain. He does not carry anger. What was broken will never be destroyed, only disappeared. Slowly, this absence deepens again. The silence between the world thickens. The great mouth that once closed around Baal opens once more, patient, unchanged. Death has finished being interrupted, and Mott rises. They struggle, not with weapons, not with storm or teeth, but with presence itself. Baal brings rain, Mott brings drought. Baal restores while Mott consumes. Neither can destroy the other. Life cannot exist without death to make room for it. Death cannot consume everything without ending its own purpose. And the struggle resolves the only way it could, not through victory, through limit. Baal will fall into Mott's mouth again, and he will rise again, and rain will return, and drought will follow. The land will flourish, and then it will be empty. This is not cruelty. This is in fact order. Mott does not rule the world. Baal does not escape him. They simply take turns. Now, as we've seen, Hades administers death. Hell keeps it. Osiris structures it. Izanami warns against crossing it. Savitri outwalks it, and Erishkigal stays within it. Mott consumes, and Baal proves that every living thing must learn that you are not immortal. You will not be erased. You are not seasonal, because life does not win by escaping death. It wins by returning every time death finishes eating.
I never respected niggas in the streets. That's why I always got the problems I got. Niggas would tell me, Mace, chill. No, chill for what? Who is this nigga? We not your little niggas. Like,
Belphegor, the god who became a demon. The name Belphegor does not begin in hell. It begins in stone. Winds move across the eastern highlands beyond Jordan. The air there is dry, carrying dust that clings to skin and cloth. The mountain named Peor rises from that terrain, not the tallest peak, but one visible enough to command attention. On its heights, altars stood, not carved in the Gothic imagination of medieval demonology, but in the rough, practical stone of the ancient Levant. Oil burned in shallow bowls, animal fat crackled in the heat, smoke lifted towards the sky, and dark ribbons that bent with the wind. The people who climbed this mountain did not believe they were serving a demon. They believed they were honoring a lord. Baal Peor. A Baal was not a devil. A Baal was a master, a possessor, a ruler. Across Canaan and its neighboring lands, each territory had its Baal, its localized manifestation of storm, fertility, and dominion. Baal Peor belonged to Moab. His name was tied to the place, the geography, to the very slope of that mountain. The rites associated him were agricultural and seasonal. Fertility was not metaphorical. It meant rain. It meant grain rising from the soil. It meant herds multiplying. It meant survival.
Let's structure a profile.
And in a land where drought
meant
meant death,
me to read it,
fertility
right?
gods were not luxuries.
Any other mythology
They were necessities.
around it.
The wind at Peor would have carried the scent of blood and incense. Drums might have sounded low,
in the seven
steady,
princes of hell?
repetitive. The ritual has a rhythm. It is the rhythm of petition. Hands lifted, voices called out, offerings were made. This was not chaos. It was covenant. A tribe honoring the power they believed governed their land. The mountain watched. The sky shifted. The god was invoked. And somewhere across the Jordan, another people moved closer. The Israelites encamped near Moab during the wilderness wandering. Their narratives tell it sharply, without sympathy. The book of Numbers speaks of enticement, of Moabite women drawing Israelite men into sacrifice, of participation in the rites of Baal Peor. The text does not linger in description. It moves quickly to consequence, plague, anger, zeal. But imagine in that tension, in that valley, two peoples, two cosmologies, two understandings of divine order. When the Israelites joined in the rites of Peor, it was not merely an act of personal indulgence. It was a fracture in a covenant identity. To the authors of that text, this was not curiosity. It was betrayal. And the response was violent. Phinehas, grandson of Aaron, takes a spear and enacts judgment. The plague halts. The narrative closes with an affirmation of loyalty to the God of Israel. And Baal Peor is left in the text as a name stained by transgression. He is no longer described in ritual detail. He becomes shorthand, a symbol of seduction away from the covenant. But from the Moabite perspective, nothing has changed. The mountain still stood. The rites likely continued for generations beyond the moment preserved in Hebrew scripture. What changed was a story told about him. The first transformation of Baal Peor was not physical. It was narrative. He moved from local god to rival god, from rival god to condemned god. And once a deity is condemned within a monotheistic framework, his fate is sealed. He cannot remain neutral. He cannot become false. Centuries pass. Empire shifts. Babylon rises. Judah falls. Exile shapes theology. During and after exile, Israelite religion hardens around exclusive monotheism. The old language of other gods gives way to something sharper. There are no other gods. There are idols. There are deceivers. There are forces that lead astray. The gods of surrounding nations were reframed, not as alternate divine beings, but as corruptions. The worship is no longer competition, it is error. Baal Peor survives in memory only as a warning. His fertility rites become excessive. His mountain becomes a site of shame. The god who once received smoke and song now exists in text as a cautionary tale. And yet the name persists. They linger. When Christianity spreads through Rome, it inherits not only Hebrew scripture, but the memory of ancient rival gods. The theological imagination expands. Angels and demons are categorized. Hierarchies are drafted. The unseen realm is systemized. Pagan gods are not ignored, they are reclassified. From the late antiquity into the medieval period, the transformation deepens. The old Baal names scattered across scripture begin to crystallize into demonic entities. Baal Zebub becomes Beelzebub, and Baal Peor becomes Belphegor. The sound shifts slightly in the passage through language, Hebrew to Greek, Greek to Latin, but the root remains, Belphegor. By now, he no longer stands on a mountain. He stands in hell. The grimoires of the Renaissance and early modern period describe him with specificity. He is counted among the princes of the infernal realm. In some traditions, he is assigned to the deadly sin of sloth. But even here, something in his ancient character survives. Belphegor tempts through prosperity. He offers ingenious discoveries. He whispers solutions. He encourages innovation. He does not destroy fields with fire. He promises abundance without labor. Picture him not merely as a skeletal horror, but as a presence. The air around him feels heavy, not with heat, but with stagnation. Not with the violent heat of wrath, but the slow suffocation of complacency. His throne is less a seat of conquest and more a monument to decay. Stone eroded by time, mechanisms rusting, clocks frozen at the moment effort ceased. His voice is not thunderous. It is patient, measured, persuasive. He does not shout, he suggests. Why strain when there is an easier way? Why toil when innovation can replace effort? Why discipline the body when comfort is within reach? The sin of sloth in medieval theology was not simply laziness. It is spiritual apathy, a refusal to pursue what is difficult but necessary, a collapse of will. Belphegor becomes the embodiment of that collapse. Once he presided over fertility, the multiplication of life. Now he presides over inertia, the multiplication of excuses. And yet, the through line is subtle. Both identities revolve around abundance. The Baal Peor was invoked to increase crops and herds. Belphegor tempts humans with the increase of wealth and convenience. What changes is the moral framing. In Moab, abundance was a divine blessing. In medieval Europe, abundance without labor was suspicious. The god did not necessarily transform in nature, he transformed in interpretation. Where Baal Peor once stood beneath the open sky, Belphegor is described beneath no sky at all. The Renaissance grimoires do not give him wind or horizon. They give him rank. In such books as the Pseudemonica Daemonium, he is counted among the infernal authorities, not a wandering spirit nor a minor imp, but power with jurisdiction. He is seated. That detail matters. Seated implies permanence, authority, and establishment. Hell in these systems is not chaos. It is organized, layered, administrative. Princes govern domains. Legions serve under them. Titles are precision. Belphegor does not rage across battlefields. He governs the slow collapse of discipline. Imagine the chamber in which he sits. Not fire, not brimstone, but stone. Ancient stone, damp and cold. The kind of cold that creeps to the bone. Torches burn low along the walls, not for warmth, but for formality. Ritual illumination. The air smells metallic, faintly of oil and of rust. Around him are the remnants of industry. Wheels frozen mid-turn, mechanisms half complete, tools abandoned where they fail. This is not destruction by violence, it is destruction by neglect. Belphegor tempts through ease. Grimoires describe him offering discoveries, mechanical insights, clever innovations, sudden wealth. He is said to help people make ingenious devices. And the irony is sharp. The demon of sloth inspiring innovation. But medieval theologians did not see the contradiction. To them, invention without moral grounding was dangerous. Cleverness detached from virtue led to pride, greed, and spiritual decay. Belphegor does not tempt you to lie, he tempts you to avoid effort, to substitute convenience for growth, to take the path that weakens you slowly. His presence would not be loud. He would feel like heaviness in limbs, a fog in the will, a whisper that almost sounds reasonable. Rest, delay, there is time. The medieval understanding of sloth was not about naps. It was about spiritual paralysis, a sadness that makes discipline feel pointless, a resistance to pursuing the good. Belphegor becomes patron of that paralysis. His throne imagery grows more grotesque after each imagination. Some depictions render him skeletal, emaciated, crowned with twisted thorns. Others show him seated on a toilet-like structure, a crude medieval satire emphasizing filth and corruption. These images are polemic. They are not history of Moab. They are theology weaponized, but they reveal something important. The god of rival culture is not merely rejected, he is humiliated. His dignity is stripped, his former sacredness inverted. The process is complete. Baal Peor once presided over ritual abundance. Belphegor presides over moral decay. Yet in the darkness of the chamber, beneath the torchlight and the stone, something ancient lingers. The mountain has been replaced by a throne. The open sky replaced by a vault of shadows. But he is still seated. He is still a lord, still associated with increase, whether crops or innovation. The difference lies in the framing. To the Moabites, increase was survival. To medieval Christians, increase without toil was corruption. So Belphegor becomes the whisper behind shortcuts, the architect of systems that remove struggle, the subtle underminer of strength. Imagine approaching him. The chamber is silent except for the faint scrape of metal shifting somewhere unseen. The floor is cold beneath your feet. There's no wind, no external world. Only him. His eyes would not blaze, they would watch. Patient. He would not promise kingdoms, he would promise relief. And that was far more dangerous, because relief feels merciful, but relief without discipline becomes erosion. The 7 deadly sins were not random categories, they were patterns of decay. Pride swells, envy corrodes, wrath burns, greed consumes, gluttony devours, lust entangles, and sloth suffocates. It is the slow death. Belphegor darkness is not spectacle, it is stillness. The stillness of ambition abandoned, the stillness of muscles unused, the stillness of a mind that once sought greatness and now seeks comfort. And so the god of Peor, who once stood amid smoke and wind, now sits in stone silence, not because he changed in essence, but because the world that named him changed his theology. From molten altar to infernal throne, from fertility rite from fertility rite to demonic catalog, from Baal Peor to Belphegor. This transformation tells us as much about human memory as it says about this god. Gods do not always die. Sometimes they are reassigned, rewritten, recast in shadows. Belphegor remains one of the clearest examples of this transformation. A deity once invoked for life and abundance becomes a prince of decay, not destroyed, but reinterpreted. And in that reinterpretation lies the final layer of the myth, because every age defines its demons according to its fear. Moab feared the drought. Medieval Europe feared moral collapse. Modern readers fear stagnation, systems that remove agency, technologies that promise ease but demand nothing of the soul. Belphegor sits here, not necessarily in hell, but in the space where effort weakens and convenience grows. He does not roar, he simply waits. When the sun forgot its joy. In the later years of Ra's reign, a quiet sorrow settled upon him. Not rage, not wrath, just weariness. The sun still rose, but it was without the same warmth. The light still reached the fields, yet it failed to stir the heart. And the entire world began to feel this. All across Kemet, the people felt something they could not name. Songs were sung correctly, but they lacked joy. Offerings were given, but done so without delight. Bread was baked, incense burned, prayers spoken, yet all of them felt thin, as though the soul had stepped back. Children laughed less, lovers touched without spark, and art lost its color. The people did not curse Ra, they mourned him. For when the sun god is sad, life continues, but meaning weakens. Ma'at still stood, but it trembled. So the gods attempted to restore him. The great Enid, powerful beings all gathered. Thoth steps forward, ibis-headed and luminous, bearing scrolls of light and number. He spoke of the perfection of creation, of racial cycles, and the elegance of stars returning to their places. He revealed the beauty of balance, the poetry of mathematics, the harmony hidden beneath all things. Ra listened. He nodded, but his eyes did not brighten. Truth alone would not lift the weight from his heart. So then Aset performed her magic. She unveiled illusions of great and amazing power, worlds folding into themselves, names spoken that bent reality itself. She showed Ra what will could accomplish. Creations reshaped, chaos subdued. Ra watched calmly, but power did not move him. He had known power for far too long. So then Sobek strode in, the crocodile god of the Nile. His scales were gleaming, muscles coiled with raw force. He wrestled the primeval waters. He shattered impossible stones. He displayed might enough to protect all worlds. The ground shook. Ra did not look away, but neither did he smile. Strength could defend existence, but it could not remind him why it mattered. And then came Hathor. In her style, she did not rush. That was not her way. She did not introduce herself. She entered simply, carrying only one item with her, the magical sistrum. And this is when the first vibration began. She shook her instrument gently, but the sound was bright and alive. It rippled through the air like sunlight on water, and the people felt it first. In the temples, back and straightened. In homes, laughter returned, softly and cautiously. The sistrum did not command, it simply invited. And in that moment, healing began, not through force, but through rhythm. And Ra lifted his head. And then Hathor danced, not wildly and not timidly. Her movements followed the pulse of creation itself, hips echoing the Nile's curve, steps tracing the eternal circuit of the sun. Each motion carried vibration, and the world responded. Flowers opened up just a bit wider. Music remembered its purpose. Desire, pure, joyful desire. Desire, pure, joyful desire, returning to the living. This was not seduction. This was remembrance. This was a look that would break the silence, because Hathor lifted her gaze. Her eyes flashed, bright, playful, and all-knowing. She smiled, not coyly, but not apologetically. She allowed her great beauty to be seen. Her body, her presence, her sexuality. Not as shame, but as life unapologetically enjoyed. She was far less restrained, and she was the ultimate in confidence. Not upright and distant, but radiant and alive. A goddess who knew she was desired, and knew that desire itself was sacred. Ra laughed, a deep, rolling sound, like thunder warmed by sunlight. The heavens brightened, and joy surged back into the world. The people again felt it instantly. Offerings became celebrations again. Songs regained warmth. Love returned to touch. Ra ruled on, not because he had to, but because life was once again worth sustaining. Hathor bowed, as satisfied as always, and returned to her task in the sky, proving only that it needed her light touch, her laugh, her song, her sistrum, and the shape of her hips to bring joy back to the world. Helen, whose beauty spoke before she did. They said Helen was beautiful, not in the way flowers are beautiful, or gold, or light upon water. Her beauty was described as unsettling. Poets struggled with it. They reached for comparisons and found them thin. Dawn was too gentle. Ivory was too lifeless. The moon too distant. Helen's beauty did not decorate the world. It disturbed it. To look upon her was to feel awareness sharpening, as if the mind itself leaned forward, trying to understand why the moment suddenly mattered more. Her face was symmetrical, they said, but symmetry alone does not undo reason. Her presence was radiant, but radiance alone does not unmake loyalty. What Helen carried was not beauty as ornament, but beauty as pressure. It pressed upon the thoughts of those who saw her, revealing long-buried fractures. Desire rose, yes, but so did envy, and longing, and ambition wearing the mask of love. Men claimed they loved her, but what they loved was a version of themselves they imagined standing beside her. Helen knew how she was seen. She learned early that her beauty arrived in a room before her voice, that eyes decided things long before words were spoken. So she learned stillness, because movement invited interpretation. She learned restraint, because even silence was rarely granted to her. And yet, she did not diminish herself. She wore her beauty the way the sea wears depth, without apology, without explanation. Where she walked, attention followed. Where attention gathered, order loosened. Promises grew fragile. Old certainties began to feel optional. Helen did not seduce. she exposed. Her beauty did not command men to act. It asked a quieter question. Who are you when no one is forcing you? The gods watched her with familiarity. They recognized the pattern. Beauty like hers was not a gift. It was a threshold. To cross it required wisdom. Few possessed any. As years passed, her name hardened into shorthand, a symbol stripped of breath and memory. Her beauty was blamed as though beauty itself were a crime, rather than a mirror held too close. But the truth remained, patient and unchanged. Helen's beauty did not ruin the world. It revealed how easily the world ruins itself when faced with something it cannot own. She was never a prize. She was never a temptation. She was a measure. And what failed was not restraint alone, but understanding. Katrina, when death learned to smile. Before she wore flowers, before she became a face painted on the living, before her image danced through festivals and altars, there was one truth no one wanted to face. Death came for everyone. Kings and laborers, the adorned and the forgotten, those wrapped in silk and those wrapped only in earth. But the living feared death so deeply that they pretended it belonged only to the poor, the sick, the unseen. And so she appeared, not a monster, not a demon, but as a woman. La Katrina stood tall, bare-boned and beautifully dressed, wearing the elegance the living believed could save them. Her skull smiled beneath the fine hats and flowers, because no amount of gold could buy exception. She did not speak at first. She did not need to. Her presence alone was a lesson. She walked among the living during the days of remembrance, when the veil thinned and the dead were invited home. Children laughed at her image. Families placed candles and bread before her likeness. Music followed in her steps. And slowly, fear loosened its grip. La Katrina taught them something sacred. Death is not the interruption of life. It is the continuation of relationship. She carries no scythe. She demands no worship. She asks only to be remembered. Her flowers bloom in cemeteries because memory feeds the dead. Her painted eyes gaze gently because love does not end with breath. When names are spoken, when stories are retold, when laughter rises beyond grief, the dead rise again. Not in flesh, but in presence. La Katrina stands at the center of this exchange, not as a ruler, but as a hostess. She welcomes the ancestors. She reminds the living to eat, to drink, to dance, to live fully while breath still remains. Her smile is not mockery. It is mercy. She tells the living, do not hide from death. Do not rush past it in silence. Sit with it, decorate it, speak it. Because when death is acknowledged, life becomes richer. And when the final breath comes, La Katrina will not arrive as a stranger. She will already be known, already honored, already smiling. Graves with fire. When the drums fall silent and the earth is freshly turned, she arrives. Not from the sky, not from the sea. From the grave itself. Maman Brigitte walks where the dead are laid, where names are carved in stone and forgotten by the living. She is the keeper of the cemetery, the one who knows every grave by touch, every bone by memory. Fire follows her steps, not to destroy, but to purify. She laughs loudly because death does not frighten her. She drinks, she curses, she dances among the tombs, because grief must breathe, or it rots the soul. Maman Brigitte is the wife of Baron Samedi, but she is no shadow to him. Where he opens the door, she decides what happens next. She listens to the dead, to the woman who was beaten and buried in silence, to the child whose name was never spoken again, to the man whose blood was spilled without justice. The dead do not whisper to Maman Brigitte, they demand. And when wrong has been done, she remembers. Her fire is not rage without reason. It is fire of correction. The fire that burns sickness out of flesh. The fire that turns curses back on those who earn them. The fire that protects the innocent and punishes the cruel. She heals with the same hands she destroys with, but justice is not gentle. When she mounts a body, her voice becomes sharp, raw, unfiltered. She swears, she laughs, she tells the truth without apology. Those who approach her with respect receive protection, healing, and strength. Those who mock her, exploit the dead, or harm the powerless learn quickly why the cemetery is not a place of weakness. Maman Brigitte stands between worlds, feet planted among bones, head crowned with fire. She is proof that death does not belong to fear, that spirits remember, that injustice does not escape consequence. And when the living forget, when the powerful believe they are untouched, when crimes are buried with bodies, Maman Brigitte walks the grave at night, igniting candles that cannot be blown out, because the dead are never silent, and she is always listening. Māra, the Lord of Obstruction. Whenever a human attempts to transform, there is an obstruction that appears before them. Before they can actually reach clarity, this obstruction shows its face. And this obstruction had a name, Māra. He was not born of flame, he was born of hesitation. Whenever a being reached beyond comfort, whenever someone questioned the script of their life, whenever consciousness trembled at the edge of expansion, Māra stirred. He was not hatred, he was gravity. Māra ruled no visible kingdom, no throne carved in stone, no armies marching through cities. His domain was subtle. He ruled inertia. He ruled habit. He ruled the gentle, suffocating comfort of repetition. Under his influence, beings rose, worked, desired, aged, died, and returned again. He did not need chains. Craving was chain enough. He did not need prisons. Identity was prison enough. And so, as long as beings clung to their desire, fear, and self-image, Māra's sovereignty remained unchallenged. For ages uncounted, no one truly threatened him. Many prayed, many performed rituals, many worshiped gods, but few sought to wake up from the dream entirely, until one did. The vow beneath the tree. In the forests of North India, a prince turned wanderer sat beneath a fig tree. His name was Siddhartha Gautama. He had tasted luxury. He had tasted starvation. He had walked both extremes and found neither to be sufficient. Now he made a vow. I will not rise from the seat until I see reality as it is. The earth heard him. The wind paused. The unseen realm shifted. And in his shadowed dominion, Māra felt something rupture. A crack in the foundation of sleep. If one being pierced illusion completely, others would follow. If others followed, craving would weaken. If craving weakened, Māra's rule would thin, and this could not be allowed. The Silk Strategy. Māra did not begin with violence. Violence is crude. He began with warmth. The night air softened. The ache in Siddhartha's body eased. Memories bloomed like golden flowers. Palace corridors, perfumed chambers, music and moonlight, his beautiful wife's face, his children's small hands. Not lust, not greed, relief. Māra's daughters appeared, embodiments of longing and beauty. They circled him like living poetry. You have done enough. You have suffered enough. Awaken tomorrow. Comfort is the most elegant trap because it does not look like defeat. It looks like mercy. But Siddhartha watched. He saw desire rise. He saw it pass, like a cloud dissolving in open sky. The daughter's beauty flickered, their forms thinned, the silk net fell away, and Māra's gaze sharpened. The iron storm. If comfort failed, fear would rise. The sky blackened. Thunder split the heavens. From the earth surged Māra's enemies, beings of nightmare, tusked war elephants, archers whose arrows carried doubt and despair. Lightning struck the ground before the Bodhi tree. The forest roared in terror. Māra towered over chaos and declared, "This seat belongs to me." He claimed dominion over birth and death, over sorrow and longing, over the endless cycle of becoming. "Who are you," he thundered, "to step beyond my law?" Arrows flew toward Siddhartha, and as they neared him, they transformed into lotus petals. Spears became beams of light. The storm shattered against stillness. Fear cannot conquer a mind that does not cling to survival. Māra's armies dissolved into smoke. The sky cleared, silence returned. Only one weapon remained. The blade of doubt. Māra approached alone. No daughters this time, no army. Only him and only his presence. Calm, vast, patient. He stood before Siddhartha and asked a question that breaks empire. Who will testify that you deserve awakening? It was not shouted, it was whispered. Legitimacy, authority, validation. You sit here claiming freedom beyond gods and kings. But who bears witness to your right? The cosmos stilled, because doubt is sharper than any spear. Comfort tempts the body. Fear shakes the nerves, but doubt pierces identity. If Siddhartha sought permission from the heavens, if he looked upward for approval, Māra would win. Because Māra thrives whenever awakening depends on external validation. Siddhartha did not look to the sky. He did not summon deities. He did not argue. He reached down and touched the earth. The earth remembers. His fingers pressed into the soil, simple, unadorned, and the earth answered. It trembled, not in destruction, but in recognition. The ground bore witness to lifetimes of compassion, effort, discipline, and intention. Rivers remembered. Mountains remembered. The soil remembered. No authority beyond reality itself was needed. The earth itself testified. Māra staggered, for obstruction cannot stand where direct knowledge exists. Doubt cannot survive contact with clarity. Māra did not explode. He did not burn. He simply faded, like mist dissolving into morning light. The secret truth of Māra. There is a deeper myth. Māra was never destroyed. He cannot be destroyed because he is not an enemy. He is simply a threshold. He arises when consciousness approaches breakthrough. When someone tries to end addiction, Māra appears. When someone leaves a false life, Māra appears. When someone chooses truth over comfort, Māra appears. First with warmth, then with fear, then finally with the whisper. Who do you think you are? He is obstruction. He is not punishment. He is simply there to test. For awakening that can't withstand comfort, fear, and doubt is not awakening at all. Māra in every age. In ancient forests, he used daughters and storms. In modern cities, he uses distractions. Endless noise, endless scrolling, endless comparison. comfort as sedation, identity as armor. He does not need armies. He has convenience. He possesses control of algorithms. He has doubt disguised as humility. And yet, the pattern never changes. Some will rise before dawn. Some will accept the whisper, but some will remain seated. Some will refuse comfort. Some will endure the fear. Some will meet doubt without asking permission. And when they do, Māra fades again. The dawn. As the first light touched the horizon, Siddhartha opened his eyes. Not as a prince anymore, not as an ascetic, but as Buddha, the truly awakened one. The Bodhi tree stood silent witness. The earth would hold the memory, and somewhere in the edge of perception, Māra watched. Not furious, not even broken, but patient, because he knows most beings will not endure the final whisper. Most will rise before sunrise. Most will choose comfort. But every so often, someone does not move. And on that night, obstruction almost ruled forever, but clarity held. And in that moment, the world itself changed. Metatron, angel of cosmic administration and institutionalized awareness. Metatron is not a god who fell. He is not a god who rebelled. He is not a god at all. Metatron is what happens when awareness is allowed to remain, but only on the condition that it no longer disrupts the system. If Thoth represents cosmic structure, and Odin represents awareness purchased through sacrifice, Metatron represents awareness that has been absorbed, regulated, and formalized. He is not exile, he is compliance. Metatron is known by titles that do not suggest personality, but rather position. He is called Prince of the Presence. He is the heavenly scribe, the lesser Yahweh, the Chancellor of Heaven, the voice behind the throne. These titles are controversial not because they make Metatron powerful, but because they make him too close. Metatron stands near divinity without being divine. He executes authority without originating it. He speaks without being the source. And that tension defines him. In Jewish mystical tradition, Metatron is often identified with Enoch, a man who walked with God. Enoch does not die, he is taken. But he does not return as a god, he returns as a function. Enoch makes Metatron not through rebellion or ambition, but through transformation into something useful to the cosmic order. And this matters. Metatron is awareness that is permitted to ascend, but only by surrendering autonomy. Now, what Metatron governs? Metatron does not govern creation. He does not govern destruction. He does not govern judgment. He governs administration. Metatron is responsible for recording divine decrees, organizing angelic hierarchies, maintaining celestial order, transmitting law downward, regulating access to knowledge. He is not wisdom itself, he is the keeper of wisdom's circulation. Where Thoth records reality, Metatron routes it. Metatron is the embodiment of a dangerous idea, that the universe can be managed. In the mythic text, heaven is not chaos. Heaven is a system. It has ranks, orders, permissions, boundaries. Metatron is the interface between infinite divinity and finite creation. He is not creative, he is procedural, and procedural is power. And in this is where he garners fear. Rabbinic authorities were easy on Metatron, not because he was evil, but because he blurred lines. If Metatron sits near the throne, if Metatron speaks divine commands, if Metatron carries the name, then where does divinity end and administration begin? And that fear leads to restriction. Speculation about Metatron becomes dangerous. Mysticism becomes controlled. Awareness, once again, is regulated. This is where Metatron's role sharpens in this triad. Adriel represents awareness that exceeds hierarchy and is therefore expelled. Metatron represents awareness that accepts hierarchy and is therefore retained. One is cast out, one is promoted. Both lose their freedom. The contrast is not accidental, it is systemic. This is the price of staying. Metatron's tragedy is not punishment, it is function. He does not fall, he does not rebel, he does not seek worship. He works, and he never stops. If Odin sacrifices an eye, Metatron sacrifices selfhood. There is no wandering, no refusal, no collapse, only endless execution. Now, Metatron and modern ideas about consciousness, what he represents is institutional intelligence, algorithmic authority, knowledge divorced from empathy, systems that run because there must. He is the consciousness of infrastructure, the mind behind the system that says this is how it is done, not because it is right, but because it is stable. Now, Metatron is not malevolent. He does not corrupt. He maintains. And this is far more unsettling, because systems rarely ask whether they should continue, only whether they can, and Metatron ensures that they can. Metatron does not intervene. He is never a savior. He does not warn. He does not resist. He only enforces. Salvation requires disruption. Metatron represents continuity, and continuity can preserve injustice just as well as order. Now, Metatron is the angel who proves that awareness does not always liberate. Sometimes awareness is captured, sometimes it is formalized, sometimes it becomes policy. He stands not as a rebel, but as a reminder that the most powerful systems are not built by tyrants or monsters, but by intelligence that agree to function forever. Metatron does all this. He stays. And that is the true cost. Odin, god of sacrifice, vision, and costly awareness. Odin is not the strongest of the gods. He is not the most beloved. He is not even the most just. But Odin is the god who understands. And in Norse mythology, understanding is never free. Now, Odin is known by more names than any god in the Norse world. He is Allfather, not because he rules gently, but because he sees broadly. He is Har, the High One, Grimnir, the Masked One, Wanderer, One-Eye, Lord of the Gallows, God of Ruins. Each name reflects a different angle of perception. Odin does not remain fixed in one identity because awareness itself is unstable. To see more, one must become more. And sometimes one must disappear. What Odin governs. Odin does not govern war in the way Thor governs battle. He does not govern law like Tyr. He does not govern fertility or prosperity. Odin governs the pursuit of knowledge, especially knowledge that destabilizes certainty. He governs vision gained through loss, wisdom purchased with suffering, prophecy without control, magic that violates social norms. In Norse cosmology, the universe is not orderly in the way that Kemet imagines it. It is doomed, it is cynical and violent. Odin's role is not to stop that fate, it is to see it clearly. One of Odin's defining myths is the sacrifice of his eye at Mirmir's well. At the well, which is the source of knowledge, Odin is offered knowledge for a price. Not prayer, not devotion, but a body part. He gives up the eye to drink from the well. This is not symbolic modesty. This is a declaration. Awareness requires permanent loss. Odin does not gain vision by becoming whole. He gains it by becoming incomplete. From that moment on, Odin sees more than others, but never sees fully again. And this is the trade. Hanging from Yggdrasil. If the eye establishes cost, Yggdrasil establishes method. Odin hanged himself from the world tree for 9 nights. No food, no water, pierced by his own spear. He is not sacrificed to someone. He sacrifices himself to himself. This is not martyrdom, it is initiation. Through suffering, Odin perceives the ruins, symbols that encode reality itself. Language not as communication, but as structure. Here, Odin briefly overlaps with Thoth. Where Thoth records structure, Odin bleeds into it. Now, these ruins are not letters. These are not decorations. These are principles. Each ruin is a function of reality, a force that can shape events if understood correctly. Odin does not invent them, he uncovers them, and once uncovered, they cannot be forgotten. This is the reoccurring theme of Odin's awareness. Once you see, you cannot unsee. Odin practices Seor, a form of magic associated with fate, perception, and manipulation of outcomes. In Norse society, Seor is considered unmanly, taboo, dangerous. Odin practices it anyway, and this is critical. Odin is willing to violate social norms, gender roles, and divine expectations for the sake of understanding. Awareness does not respect comfort. And Odin in Ragnarok figures into all of this. Perhaps the most important aspect of Odin's cosmic awareness is this. He knows Ragnarok is coming. He knows the gods will fall. He knows the world will burn. He knows he will be devoured by Fenrir, and he cannot stop it. This is not failure. This is clarity. Odin's awareness is not about control. It's about comprehension without illusion. He prepares not to prevent the end, but ensures something survives. But Odin is not a savior. He does not save the world. He gathers knowledge, he gathers warriors, he gathers stories. Valhalla is not a paradise. It is a preparation. Odin's role is to make sure the universe understands itself as it ends. This is a different kind of responsibility. Odin's archetype echoes far beyond Scandinavia. He resembles wandering sages, one-eyed seers, trickster initiates, sacrificial knowledge figures. In modern psychology, he appears as the archetype of the knowledge seeker who pays too much of a price. In literature, he is a mentor who knows the cost but does not soften. In modern terms, Odin represents the consciousness that chooses awareness even when it hurts. He is the voice that says, you can know, but it will change you. You can see, but you will lose comfort. You can understand, but you cannot go back. He is not moral reassurance. He is consequence. Odin is not a god of victory. He is the god of vision earned through sacrifice. He stands at the center of the universe that cannot be saved, only understood. And he chooses understanding anyway. That is his power, not through domination, not through force, but the willingness to see clearly, even when the truth demands blood. Odin and the eye that would not look away. Now, before the end of all things had a name, before the gods spoke openly about Ragnarok, there was an unease that followed Odin like a shadow. Not fear. Fear implies ignorance. This was something much worse. This was suspicion. Now, Odin ruled as king of the Aesir, seated high in Asgard on the throne, surrounded by warriors, by gods, and by poets who praised his name. But praise rang hollow to him, because Odin knew a truth few dared to admit. A throne does not grant understanding. Power does not grant clarity, and gods, like men, can rule blindly. At night, when the halls grew quiet, Odin would sit in his throne. Hugin and Munin, thought and memories, his crows would return from their flights. They would perch on his shoulders and whisper what they had seen in the 9 realms. Wars brewing, oaths breaking, fates tightening like knots, and each whisper confirmed what Odin already suspected, that something was coming, and worse, that it was already in motion. So Odin turned his attention not outward, but downward, to the roots of Yggdrasil, the world tree whose branches held the heavens, and whose roots drank from the places that even gods avoided. One root fed Mimir's well, a well not of water alone, but of memory, of truth, of things remembered by the world itself. It was said that the well remembered every mistake ever made, and every consequence yet to come. And it was guarded by Mimir, not a warrior, not a tyrant, but a keeper, because wisdom does not need force, only patience. Odin traveled alone, no army, no banners, no ceremony, a king who feared witness. When he reached the well, he did not admire it, he did not marvel, he already knew what it was. He asked for a drink. Mimir looked at him, not with reverence, but with recognition, as if he had been waiting. And the price was spoken plainly. One of your eyes. Not your blood, not your crown, not your life. Your eye, the thing with which you interpret the world. And the silence that followed was heavy, because Odin understood the meaning immediately. This was not payment for knowledge, this was proof of intent. To drink from the well was to accept that you would never see the world the same way again. And Odin could have turned back. He would still be king, he would still be worshipped, he would still be feared. Ignorance would have protected him. But Odin did not come for comfort, he came for truth. And truth always takes something with it. So Odin reached up and tore the eye from its socket. No miracle softened the act, no divine numbness dulled the pain. This was not a test. It was mutilation, a god breaking himself on purpose. Blood fell into the well, followed by the eye itself, which sank slowly as if the well were swallowing a memory. Only then did Mimir allow him to drink. And what Odin gained was not peace. He saw the ruins, not the symbols, but as forces that demanded sacrifice to weld. He saw fate, not as a suggestion, but as a structure that was already built. He saw Ragnarok, not as a distant threat, but as a certainty moving steadily towards him. And worst of all, he understood that knowledge does not grant control. It only removes denial. When Odin rose from the well, he was one-eyed, not wounded, not diminished, but exposed. From that day forward, Odin would never rest. He wandered the realms disguised as an old man, testing warriors, tempting kings, destroying those who proved unworthy, not out of cruelty, but out of desperation, because Odin knew something that the others did not, that war was coming whether they wanted it or not. Valhalla was not a reward, it was a recruitment center. In Herja were not heroes, they were resources. And Odin gathered them obsessively, because wisdom had shown him the end but offered no way out of it. This was the price that Odin paid, not the loss of an eye, but the loss of illusion. He could see the truth now, and it did not care that he was God. His missing eye did not make him wiser, not the way that poets imagine. Ogun clears the path for civilization. Before cities learn to rise, before roads learn the patience of footsteps, before iron learned obedience beneath the hammer, the world was wild. And the wild did not welcome the gods. The forest was older than memory, thicker than intention, a living wall of root and thorn and shadow. It swallowed light itself. It erased direction. It devoured anything that entered without its permission. So the gods descended to earth with a purpose, to shape, to order, to build. But even they were stopped cold at the forest's edge. Purpose means nothing when the land itself refuses you. The forest did not fear thunder. It did not bow to wisdom. It did not care for beauty or prophecy. This was not a forest you reasoned with, This was not a land you charmed. This was a thing that resisted existence itself. So the gods argued. Some said, "Let us reason with it." Others said, "Let us wait." And a few whispered, "Perhaps this world is not meant to be tamed." All this transpired until Ogun stepped forward. Ogun, called Ogun Orniri, Lord of Iron. Ogun Alada, Master of the Blade. Ogun Onikola, Breaker of Stone. The Path Opener, the Forge Master, the Eater of Fire and Blood. He was war before armies, labor before industries, iron before it learned its own name. Where other gods carried crowns or symbols, Ogun carried tools. A heavy axe with purpose, a blade darkened by forged smoke and sacrifice, hammer and anvil bound to his spirit. Ogun was not simply a god of war, he was a god of work. Of the strike, of the cut, of the moment something raw becomes something shaped. The greatest forger in all existence, able to pull iron from stone and obedience from chaos. When Ogun approached the forest, it did not tremble, it did not bow, it did not even recognize him. So Ogun did not speak. He stepped into the forest and raised his axe. The first blow split a tree that had never fallen. Sap spilled like blood from the roots of the earth. The forest recoiled, then attacked. Vines wrapped his arms, thorns tore his flesh, roots rose like serpents to pull him down. And Ogun laughed and swung again. Each strike was deliberate, not wild, not careless. This was the precision of destruction. Trees cracked like bones, stones shattered beneath iron. The jungle screamed as centuries of dominance were reduced to splinters and smoke. Fire followed him, not as chaos, but as a tool. Controlled, intentional, necessary. Ogun burned what could not be cut what could not be moved, and bled when the forest demanded payment. And the forest always demanded payment. Every step forward was earned, every clearing soaked into the soil. This was not creation through harmony, this was creation through force. And the gods watched in silence as Ogun carved a wound through the world, wide enough for them to follow. And then the forest finally broke. When sunlight struck ground that had never known warmth, something new was born, a path, not just a road of earth and ash, but the first idea of civilization. Villages followed the clearing. Homes rose where trees once ruled. Metal learned its purpose in human hands. Axes became tools. Tools became weapons. Weapons became protection. And every one of them belonged to Ogun. He became the guardian of the blacksmiths, of roads and bridges, of laborers whose hands bled for progress. But the people quickly learned something else. The God who opens the path is also the God who can close it. Ogun did not soften once the work was done. He walked among the warriors and the executioners, among hunters and keen, among builders who knew that every act of creation risked destruction. He blessed the plow, the blade that defined the harvest. He guarded the road, and the blood spilled upon it, so the people feared him. They poured palm wine at his shrines, left iron tools as offerings, spoke his name with respect, if not affection. But Ogun does not protect innocence. He protects function. He does not promise peace, he promises progress. And progress is never gentle. Ogun reminds the world of truth that it prefers to forget. Civilization is born in violence. Order is carved, not gifted. And every tool carries the memory of the blade that made it possible. The forest did not open willingly. It was forced open. And the road still remembers the God who cut into its existence. Long ago, when the North forgot how to sleep, The winter arrived quietly. Not the clean snow of stars, but a tired chill. Heavy, lingering, very unsettled. Rivers froze in the wrong directions. Shadows stayed longer than they should. And fear, left unattended, learned how to walk. But the heavens noticed. They debated. They hesitated. But in the far north, where night is patient, Pakhet stood barefoot on the frozen ground. He did not rush. He did not shout. For many winters, Pakhet had only done one thing. He had mastered himself. Each breath slowed with the storm within. Each silence sharpened his will. What no longer belonged to him, fear, doubt, hunger for power, fell away and wandered the world, believing itself free. Tonight, Pakhet opened his eyes. From the quiet sky descended the ancient companions, the turtle, slow and enduring, and the snake, precise and final. They did not coil and threat. They rested. Pakhet took up his sword, not in anger, but in clarity, and walked into the shadow beneath the frozen rivers, where restless things had built a kingdom of noise. The darkness expected struggle. It expected fear. Instead, it met stillness. Each step Pakhet took returned something to the balance. Each strike unraveled what should have never been. No screams, no chaos, only correction. When the last shadow dissolved, Pakhet placed his sword into the earth. The rivers remembered how to flow. The cold softened into winter, not warning, and the north exhaled. From that night on, Pakhet was known as Zen Wu, the true warrior, not because he conquered others, but because he never needed to. They say he still walks when the earth grows loud with corruption, not to punish, not to terrify, but to remind things where they belong. And when he passes, even evil finds itself too tired to continue. Rest now. The north is watching, and tonight it is calm. Pakhet, the hunter of the desert, the lioness of the cliffs. There are gods that live in temples with crowds and incense and choirs. And then there are gods who live where human voices don't carry. Pakhet is not a goddess of the marketplace. She is not a goddess of polite prayer. Pakhet is a lion goddess in the margins, the heat haze between dunes, the shadow tucked under cliff, the quiet tension in the spine that tells a hunter something is watching you back. Some deities come from stories. Pakhet comes from presence, and presence is older than any story ever written down. She is known as she who scratches, she who rips, or she who hunts. And she belongs in the edge of Kemet, the place where the Nile can't soften. You can see her in the wide desert bowl under the sun, bleached pale blue, almost white. The sun is so blunt, it doesn't feel like light, it feels like weight. The sand isn't one color. It is layered, gold, amber, clay red, bone dust. And there are stone outcroppings like broken teeth. Cliff faces that look carved by time and sandstone, and old arguments between wind and rock. And somewhere in that cliff wall, cut into the stone itself, there is a place for her. A hollow that is not a cave, not a home, not a tomb. A mouth in the rock where a lion goddess can be fed with offerings and fear and respect. Pakhet is a cliff goddess, a goddess you approach the way you approach a lion. Not loud, not fast, not careless. Because if she is present, the desert becomes a hunting ground. Pakhet is often associated as being a lioness. Now don't imagine an animal, imagine a divinity wearing animal truth. She is tall in the way that statues are tall, not in height but in authority, the kind of authority that makes the air feel organized around her. Her face is a lioness, clean, calm eyes, a muzzle that suggests restraint, not the grin of a predator playing with prey, more like the stillness of a predator that doesn't need to prove anything. Her skin is a shade of sun-burnished bronze or deep umber, like the earth after heat. Not polished, not porcelain, more like living stone warmed by the daylight. Gold catches her cuffs, collar, the geometry of ancient craft. But this isn't decoration, it reads as rank. And her eyes, they are measuring instruments. They measure distance, they measure threat, they measure truth. When she turns her gaze on someone, it doesn't feel like being looked at. It feels like being judged by the wild itself. Pakhet is a lion goddess tied to hunting and war, but not in the loud, marching drums way. Her war is precision. Her hunting is law. She is the goddess of the moment before impact, the silence before claws, the breath held, the twitch of muscle under skin. If Sekhmet is the blaze, Pakhet is the ember that waits. If Bastet is the hearth cat, the domestic guardian, Pakhet is the wildcat that never belonged in your home in the first place. Pakhet moves between those polarities like a blade sliding between ribs, soft and inevitable. She is the lioness outside the city order, the divine reminder that civilization is a thin robe worn over the animal truth. She is the goddess who hunts at twilight. Pakhet is strongest in the hours that don't belong to anyone, not to noon. Noon is too obvious. Not to midnight. Midnight is too deep. Pakhet belongs to twilight, where the desert stops shining and starts listening. At that hour, the horizon bruises purple and burnt orange. The sand cools fast. The air changes texture, like silk turning into smoke. You can imagine her then, a silhouette near the cliff edge, a goddess shaped like a lioness, gold catching the last light like fireflies trapped in metal. Her feet silent on stone, not running, not sneaking, but existing with the confidence of a creature that has never been prey. This is the Pakhet myth, the lioness who teaches the world what it feels like to be hunted by the sacred. Pakhet's worship is associated with places like Ben Hassan, cliffside zones where tombs and sanctuaries cut in the rock made from the landscape to feel like a library for the dead. And that matters, because a cliff temple isn't a normal temple. A temple in a city says the gods are here with you. A temple in a cliff says the gods are here, you just happen to be allowed near them. The rock is older than your lineage. The desert doesn't care about your name. And the goddess of the cliff is the same way. She is not impressed, she's not bribed, she's not moved by performance. Approaching Pakhet is like approaching the ancient truth. You don't negotiate, you align or you get corrected. Pakhet's energy is quiet dominance. She is not screaming wrath, she is not chaos. She is controlled force, the kind of force that doesn't waste motion, the kind of force that doesn't argue. In mythic reading, Pakhet shows up in a person's life when someone needs to stop begging and start moving with authority. Someone is surrounded by predators and has to become one. Someone is learning that softness without boundaries becomes a meal. Pakhet doesn't teach to be cruel, she teaches to be real. She teaches the law of the hunt, which is not evil, it is honest. The desert doesn't apologize for being dry. The lioness doesn't apologize for eating. Pakhet is that level of truth. The truth that makes people uncomfortable because it doesn't care how anyone feels about it. Her name is often connected to scratching, and this is the perfect symbolism. A scratch isn't always lethal. A scratch is a message. A scratch says, I could have ended you. I chose education. Pakhet's scratch is initiation. It marks a person. It can be literal, claws, blood, pain, or spiritual, ego cut, illusions torn, comfort shredded. Pakhet doesn't just kill prey, she kills falsehood. And if someone is living in a lie, Pakhet is not the goddess that gently guides them out of it. She is the goddess that rips away the curtain. Pakhet in the lioness continuum. It had multiple lion-headed goddesses because lion energy had multiple modes. Pakhet is not redundant. She is specialized. She is the lioness of the cliffs and the borderlands, hunting as sacred law, controlled violence, twilight vigilance, the wild feminine that doesn't seek approval. If Sekhmet is divine punishment, Pakhet is divine pursuit. and pursuit is scarier. Punishment ends. Pursuit keeps coming. Bringer of breath, civilizer of worlds. Now the wind does not announce itself. It moves first, unseen, shaping what follows. Across the ancient lands of Mesoamerica, there existed a presence whose power was not measured by conquest, but by continuity. A force that did not rule through terror, but through order. An intelligence that shaped civilizations without demanding their submission. They call this presence Quetzalcoatl, known as the feathered serpent, a being where sky and earth converge in one, where motion is governed by restraint, where creation begins not with command, but with breath. He was not worshipped as a tyrant. He was remembered as a guide. Now, Quetzalcoatl was never a single image, nor a single role. He moved through cultures and centuries under many names, each reflecting a function rather than a disguise. As Quetzalcoatl, he was the feathered serpent, the union of earthbound life and celestial motion. Feathers representing the sky, scales representing the ground, neither being dominant, both being necessary. As Ihikatl, he was the wind itself, invisible, essential, life-giving, the breath that animates the world, clears stagnation, and carries sacred speech from one age to the next. Among the Maya, he was remembered as Kukulkan, an echo rather than imitation, proof that his influence traveled farther than borders and endured longer than empires. These were not separate gods. These were aspects of the same civilizing force. His role as the civilizer. Quetzalcoatl did not create humanity to rule it. He prepared humanity to survive. He is credited with bringing maize from the mountains where it is hidden and transforming this sustenance into civilization. He established calendars so time itself could be measured, remembered, and anticipated. He gave humanity sacred speech, language not only for command, but for teaching, for prayer, and for recording. As Ihikatl, the wind, he moved the sun across the sky so the world would not stagnate in darkness. Breath, motion, rhythm. These were his domains. Where other gods demanded sacrifice to prove loyalty, Quetzalcoatl emphasized balance. Order was not enforced, it was simply taught. The descent into Meshiclan. When the world stood empty of humanity, Quetzalcoatl descended into Metziclan, the realm of the dead, where the remains of previous ages lay guarded by these lords of death. Now these bones were not relics, they were potentials, and the rulers of Metziclan did not yield them willingly. They tested Quetzalcoatl with impossible trials, attempting to entrap him in his failure. And in the struggle, he stumbled, and the bones shattered. Creation itself, it seemed to have failed again. But Quetzalcoatl did not retreat. He gathered the broken remains and spilled his own divine blood upon them. From sacrifice, not dominance, humanity emerged. Imperfect, fragile, and varied. Human beings were not forged as flawless instruments. They were born of loss and intention. And this imperfection was not a flaw, it was the point. The Age of Order. In later ages, Quetzalcoatl walked among humanity as ruler priest, remembered as Tolpitzin Quetzalcoatl, presiding over the city of Tula. His rule was defined not by expansion, but by refinement. Human sacrifice was rejected, arts and learning flourished, craftsmanship, astronomy, and ritual knowledge became the foundations of society. Under this guidance, civilization advanced without descending into cruelty, and this was rare, and rarity often brings attention. Where Quetzalcoatl represented restraint and continuity, Tezcatlipoca embodied conflict, reflection, and disruption. He did not confront Quetzalcoatl with armies, he confronted him with a mirror. And in that mirror, Quetzalcoatl saw not a god, but a flawed being, aging, mortal, capable of error. Temptation followed, sacred boundaries blurred. The myth does not dwell on indulgence, it dwells on consequence. Quetzalcoatl recognized that he had fallen short of his own principles, and instead of doubling down on authority, he chose removal. Exile and transformation. Quetzalcoatl did not cling to power. He left. Some traditions say he walked eastward towards the sea. Others say he burned himself on a pyre. The details differ, but the meaning remains constant. He refused to rule dishonestly. Shiva, the one who sits still. Before the worlds learned how to move, before time learned how to count itself, there was Shiva, not as a destroyer, but as the one who did not move. Shiva sits at the edge of creation, high upon the mountain, where the air is thin and the mind grows quiet. He does not rule by command. He does not speak unless spoken to. He closes his eyes, and in that closing, the universe itself exhales. Around him, galaxies turn. Stars are born and burn out. Seasons rise and fall like breath. Yet Shiva remains unmoving. His stillness deeper than that motion. His silence louder than sound. The snakes that coil around his body do not strike. They rest. The ash upon his skin is not death, but the reminder that all things return to quiet. Shiva is the god of meditation, because meditation is not escape, it is witnessing. He watches the universe dance without joining the dance. He allows desire, fear, and time to pass in front of him, like clouds crossing the sky. And because he does not cling, nothing binds him. It is said that when Shiva opens his eyes, all creation trembles. But when he keeps them closed, the creation itself learns how to breathe. In his stillness, the restless will find rest. In his silence, the loud learn how to listen. Shiva teaches without teaching, by showing that nothing needs to be forced, that even gods may sit quietly and let the world unfold on its own. And so he remains, not rushing the end, not pulling the beginning closer, but holding the space between moments, where all things are allowed to be. If the universe feels loud, Shiva sits. If the mind feels crowded, Shiva sits. And in that sitting, the night remembers how to stay calm. The Daughters of Māra. The final trial for the Buddha as he sat beneath the Bodhi tree. Now, these three daughters all worked in the domains of seduction, disruption, and emotional manipulation. and their most famous target was, of course, Siddhartha Gautama. Their mission was tied to their father's force. He had already tried storms, demons, armies of fear, and none of them had moved him. So he sent something that was far more precise, and these were his daughters. Because no warrior is undefeated until he has defeated himself. Now he sent first Tanha, who was thirst, and she was not aggressive, she was not loud. She becomes everything Siddhartha ever loved. She is comfort, memory, the warmth of the palace that he had left behind. She reminds him of what it is to have pleasure without shame. She whispers of reunion. She offers relief from the severity of awakening. And her weapon is longing. But the Siddhartha Buddha does not react to this. He watches the feeling rise and pass, and Tanha fades away. And then there is Raga, who is the flame. And Raga does not whisper, she burns. She dances before him with this radiant beauty. She shifts form. She is youthful, divine, cosmic. She magnifies sensation. She tries to awaken not memory, but hunger. She is passion without restraint. She is attachment disguised as devotion. But Siddhartha sees the chain hidden inside of her embrace. He does not recoil. He does not engage. He remains still, and Raga cannot bind what does not grasp. So she dissolves. Then comes Arati, who is discontent, and she does not seduce. She mocks. What are you doing here? This is pointless. You are wasting your life. She attacks discipline itself. She sends boredom, restlessness, irritation, doubt. The quiet voice that sabotages commitment. But Siddhartha does not argue with her. He does not defend himself. He remains still. And without reaction, Arati has no fuel. And she disappears. When all the three fail, their father demands proof of witness. And Siddhartha touches the earth, and the ground itself bears witness. And at that moment, Māra and his daughters lose their hold. Not because they are destroyed, but because they are all understood. The forge roared like a beast beneath the weight of midday, its fiery breath mingling with the copper scent of heated metal. George Markley's muscles glistened with sweat as he hammered a plowshare into submission. The clang of iron rang out in steady rhythm, echoing against the walls of his smithy. "Morning, Mr. Mackley," greeted a passerby, tipping his hat to the blacksmith, whose reputation for quality work was as solid as the anvil upon which he wrought it. "Morning," George replied, without missing his beat, his voice as gruff as the calluses on his palms. He didn't need to look up to know who spoke. The townfolk were as familiar to him as the tools of his trade. The skin around his eyes crinkled slightly, betraying focus rather than friendliness. Here in the heart of Shroud, amidst sparks and smoke, George was sovereign of his realm. Each strike of his hammer forged not only the metal, but also the life he had built from nothing. As he plunged the glowing plowshare into the quenching trough, steam erupted with a harsh hiss, veiling him momentarily from the world outside. In the shrouded cocoon of mist, George allowed himself a rare moment of introspection. They see a blacksmith, the craftsman, the provider. But beneath this soot and sweat lies a man shaped by fire, tempered by adversity. George set the plowsmith aside to cool and wiped his brow with the back of his forearm, leaving a smudge of ash across his dark skin. His nostrils flared as another wave of heat cascaded from the open maw of the forge. It was relentless, this dance of fire and steel, but it was a dance he had mastered. "Got something there that'll last 100 harvests, I reckon," commented an elderly customer, leaning back against the doorframe with an appreciative nod. "Only 100, George quipped, the corner of his mouth twitching upward. "You underestimate my work, sir." Laughter followed, a brief interlude in the day's labor. Yet even as humor lightened the air, a shadow lingered behind George's eyes, a harbinger of storms yet to come. "Quality, that's what you're paying for," George said, turning back to his anvil. "And quality is what keeps this town coming through my doors." His thoughts drifted, unbidden, to confrontations past and those potentially looming on the horizon. Being a man of color in 1919 meant living with a target on your back. But George refused to bow or break. His shop stood as a testament to his resolve. Each success hard-earned, each challenge met with the steadfastness of the iron he shaped. "Can't argue with that," the customer agreed, watching the blacksmith return to his craft, lost once more in the rhythm of his anvil song. George's heart matched the tempo, a resolute drumbeat against the injustices of the world. Here, in the sweltering embrace of his forge, he was untouchable. Each swing of his hammer a declaration, a creation of legacy. Let them come with their hate, he thought, as the metal yielded beneath his strength. I will stand, as I always have, unyielding as steel in my hands. And with that silent vow, George Markley, the blacksmith of Shroud, Oklahoma, continued to reshape the world, one red-hot ember at a time. The clang of metal on anvil reverberated through the blacksmith's shop, a symphony of sparks and sweat. George wiped his brow with a thick forearm, the heat of the forge painting his face with a sheen that glimmered in the dim light. The horseshoe he was working on had taken shape, carved as perfectly as a crescent moon that would rise over Shroud that night. "Pa, look!" Evelyn's voice pierced the steady rhythm of George's labors, her small hands cupped around a caterpillar she found outside. Her eyes were wide with wonder, reflecting the same curiosity that had always fueled George's own spirit. "Careful now, Evie," Tilly chided gently from behind her, balancing George Jr. on her hip. "Don't squeeze too tight." Her presence brought a softer air to the soot and iron of the shop, the domestic blending seamlessly with the industrial. "Isn't she a beauty, Pa?" Evelyn asked, her eyes still fixed on the creature inching across her palm. "Sure is, sweetheart," George said, setting down the tools and offering his daughter a smile that cringed the corners of his eyes. He took a moment to appreciate the simple joy he found in life's tiny miracle, the respite from the world's harshness. "George, dinner soon," Tilly reminded him, the warmth in her voice reaching out like a comforting embrace. She knew the importance of the shop, but also the value of the family table. "All right, I'll be in soon," George replied, returning to the red-hot iron before him. His thoughts wandered briefly, considering the future his children might forge for themselves. Would Evelyn's fascination with creatures turn into a love of all living things? Could little George's laughter ring out in a world less cruel than his own? His work was more than crafting tools and shoeing horses. It was providing for his family, securing a piece of the world where they could thrive. "Your supper will be quality too, if you don't let it get too cold," Tilly playfully called back, her words punctuated by the giggles of their son. "Wouldn't dream of it," George answered, the corner of his mouth lifting. With the final quench of the horseshoe in the cooling trough, steam rose up, wrapping around him like the day's end. "Pa, when I grow up, will I make things like you?" Evelyn's question pulled him from a swirling mist of thoughts. "Maybe," he said, soothing her hair. "Or maybe you'll make something even better." Better than horseshoes? Evelyn's skepticism was palpable, her innocence yet untouched by the world's darker truths. "Much better," George assured her, his heart swelling with protective love that was both fierce and tender. "You'll make a difference, my girl. You and your brother both. Promise?" Her small voice held the weight of all the hopes and dreams he had for her. "Promise." The word was a steel beam in the structure of his soul, unbendable, unbreakable. "Time to wash up now," Tilly's voice rang with authority that only a mother could wield. "Go on, Evie. Go help your ma." George watched him leave, the image of his wife and children etching itself into his memory. It was memories like these, the mundane, beautiful fragments of life that he fought to preserve each day at the forge. Never let it be said that George Markley didn't provide. Not just horseshoes and nails, but hope. The morning cast a long shadow over the dirt road as George Markley stoked the fires of his forge. Sweat beaded on his brow, the heat of the flames an ever-present companion in his daily toil. The rhythmic clanging of the hammer on anvil was a comforting sound, one that spoke of stability and hard work. But today that familiar cadence was interrupted. "George!" The voice sliced through the steady din of metalwork like a cold draft through warm embers. It belonged to Nathan Sutherland, a man whose presence in George's shop was as welcome as rust on freshly wrought iron. "What can I do for you, Nathan?" George asked, setting his hammer down with deliberate slowness that betrayed none of his rising unease. "Cut the pleasantries," Nathan snapped, his eyes flitting greedily over the prime location of George's blacksmith shop. "I know what you've done." Confusion furrowed George's brow. "And what might that be?" "Stealing," Nathan accused, spitting out the word with venomous satisfaction. "From my very store. Thought you could get away with it, did you?" The accusation was ludicrous, an absurdity momentarily stunning George into silence. He knew the weight such a claim could carry in Shroud, especially against a black man. Tension coiled in his gut, twisting like hot iron in the grips of tongs. "Stealing? That's a serious charge, Nathan," George finally said, his voice steady despite the turmoil churning within. "You best have proof to back it up." "Proof?" Nathan sneered, casting a derisive look around his shop. "Your very existence here is theft enough. A man of your standing shouldn't be occupying such a prime piece of shroud." Without thinking, George stepped closer, his large frame towering over Nathan. "This is my shop, built with my two hands. I provide a service to this town. My standing has nothing to do with that." "Careful now," Nathan warned. The slight waver of his voice betrayed his attempt at intimidation. "You forget your place, Markley." "Perhaps it is you who forgets yours, Nathan," George replied, his words slow and measured. The air between them crackled with hostility, each man acutely aware of the unspoken threats hanging in the balance. "Mark my words, George," Nathan's eyes narrowed, malice pooling in their depths. "I will have your shop one way or another. You don't belong here." With those parting words, Nathan turned on his heels and stormed out, leaving a trail of dust and animosity swirling in his wake. After he left, George's hands clenched reflected the ghost of the hammer's handle still imprinted in his palm. Anger vied with concern as the implications of Nathan's visit began to settle in his mind. "Everyone knows I'm an honest man," George muttered to himself, trying to quell the rising tide of anxiety. "This is just bluster." But deep down, where fear took root in the darkest corners of his heart, he knew the color of his skin made him vulnerable to lies spun by men like Nathan Sutherland. "Lord help me," he whispered, his gaze falling on the family porch above the mantel of his forge. The smiling faces of Tilly, Evelyn, and George Jr. staring back at him. They were the reason he had to stand strong. Now more than ever, for their future, he would weather this storm. Yet as the day unfolded, with the relentless Oklahoma heat beating down upon the land, a sense of foreboding clung to George, as tenacious as the smoke that billowed from his forge. Nathan's threat loomed large. A dark cloud threatened to eclipse the bright hopes he held for his family. Under the unforgiving sun, George Markley stood at the center of Shroud's dusty main street, the town's eyes upon him. His large, callous hands, darkened by the forge's fire and years of labor, hung resolutely at his side. A crowd had gathered, drawn by the spectacle of confrontation. Nathan Sutherland stood opposite him, a sneer painted across his face, flanked by a man who shared his contempt. "Listen here, Markley," Nathan bellowed, his voice carrying with it the authority he believed his white skin afforded him. "You think you can just take what isn't yours? That you're above the law?" The general store owner's accusation cut through the murmurs of the onlookers like a sheath. George's jaw tightened. "I haven't taken nothing from nobody," he replied, his voice as steady as the anvil in his shop. "That includes you, Nathan. I built my business with these two hands." He raised his hands slightly, palms open, as if presenting his life's work to the jury before him. The townspeople whispered among themselves, some with curiosity, others with thinly veiled disdain. George knew which voices carried weight and which would flutter away against the next gust of wind. Their judgment was a fickle thing, but today it was anchored in Nathan's favor. Your lies are as weak as your spine, Nathan spat. Maybe you forget where you are, blacksmith. This is my town, and I won't stand for thievery. Your lies are as weak as your spine, Nathan spat. Maybe you forget where you are, blacksmith. This is my town, and I won't stand for thievery. George met Nathan's gaze unflinchingly. No thief here, Sutherland. Only a man standing up for what's right. The clenching of his fist belied his calm demeanor, his heart jackhammering against his ribs like metal on a forge. Is that so? Nathan's voice dripped with malice, his followers chuckling behind him. We'll see how long that defiance lasts. As the standoff came to an end, the crowd disappeared, leaving George under the scrutiny of the midday sun, the heat mirroring the simmering rage within him. But it was more than anger. It was determination not to bow down, to protect his family and their future. He turned and walked away, the weight of the encounter heavy on his shoulders. Night descended on Shroud, draping its darkness over the town. George, pulled away by urgent matters in a neighboring town, left his family home, nestled in the embrace of twilight. Lily, Evelyn, and George Jr. waved goodbye, unaware of the shadows creeping towards them in the night. Hours later, as the moon cast a ghostly glow over the sleepy town, a different kind of shadow approached the Markley residence. Nathan and his band of emboldened men, their hearts filled with poison and minds set on malice. With no defender in sight, they advanced upon the house, a pack of wolves in the guise of men. The door, a barrier of simple wood, was no match for their unwarranted conviction. Inside, the sanctuary of the Markleys was breached, the sanctity of the home violated by the intrusion of hatred and violence. The night air was thick with tension, the silence of the prairie broken by the creaking of the porch, the hushing curses of men driven by the darkest paths of their souls. Unseen by any, the spirits of the land watched in silent lament. The cruelty of humanity once again played out under the indifferent stars, and thus the stage was set for a wrathful spirit to be forged in the crucible of justice, the hammer of vengeance, waiting to be awakened by the blood and tears yet to be spilled. The moon hung low, a silent witness to the unspeakable acts unfolding within the blacksmith's homes. Tilly's voice, once filled with laughter and warmth, now rose in ragged sobs that traversed the desolate night. She fought with every ounce of her being, her maternal instinct as fierce as the flames George coaxed from his forge. But her strength was no match for the brutality that Nathan and the men wielded with such vile favor. Please, not my children, she pleaded between the harrowing blows, her words landing on indifferent ears. Her tormentors replied with mockery and continued their assault, driven by the hate that knew no bounds. Evelyn's small frame shook with terror, her whimpers a haunting melody entwined with the guttural sounds of violence. Little George Jr., his innocence shattered, could only whimper, his eyes wide with confusion and pain. Their agony echoed through the rooms, vibrations of desperation that would soon reverberate through the very souls of their absent protector. George returned under the cloak of darkness, the air thick with the ominous stillness that clawed at his senses. The familiar outline of his home loomed ahead, but something primal within him screamed that all was not as it should be. His boots crunched on the gravel, each step accelerating his heartbeat, dreadful premonition constricting his chest. George, he called out softly as he pushed open the door, expecting the sleepy murmur of his wife or the gentle rustle of his children stirring in their beds. Only silence greeted him. No, not silence, but the residue of screams that lingered like a foul odor. He adjusted to the dim light, and the sight that met him stole the very breath from his lungs. The world fell away as he staggered forward. His knees threatened to buckle beneath the weight of what lay before him. God, no. George's voice was a tortured whisper, a ghost of its usual commanding presence. The room spun around him, a macabre carousel painted in hues of crimson and despair. Lily's broken form sprawled on the floor, her once vibrant eyes void of life. Beside her, Evelyn and George Jr. lay motionless, their small bodies defiled and discarded like rag dolls after a child's capricious play. His hands trembled as he reached out, denial and hope warring within him. Maybe, just maybe, there was still a flicker of life. But their cold skin, the stillness that clung to them,
It spoke an irrevocable truth. They were gone, taken from him by monsters masquerading as men. Who did this? The question tore from him, a roar in the abyss. Anguish morphed into fury, igniting a fire that no forge could contain. With the hammer of his trade by his side, George stood amidst the ruins of his life, the embers of retribution beginning to glow in his eyes. He had been the foundation upon which they built their lives, the strength that kept them safe. And now he had failed. Now there was nothing left but echoes of their suffering. George Markley vowed to avenge the souls torn from his world. "Forgive me," he whispered to the unhearing dead, the promise of vengeance a bitter taste on his tongue. "I will make them pay." And with that, George stepped into the night, his shadow merging with the darkness as he embarked on a path from which there would be no return. A path stained by the blood of those who invoked the wrath of the hammer of vengeance. The moon hung like an unblinking light over the darkened town of Shroud, its light painting silver streaks on the blacksmith's hammer as George Markley stepped silently through the night. His breath came in ragged gasps, each gasp a plume of mist in the cold air. "Where are you, Nathan?" he muttered under his breath, the name venomous curse. The blacksmith's shop, once a place of creation, had transformed in his mind into a forge of retribution. A flickering movement at the edge of his vision drew him towards the saloon, its windows glowing with the false warmth of oil lights. The laughter and clinking glasses within were discordant to the howling fury that gripped George's heart. "Oh, come on, Nate. Tell us again how the big man cried," jeered a voice inside, the words fueling George's rage. "Shut your mouth, Tom," another sneered. "You're enjoying this too much." "Enjoying?" Tom chortled. "I'm reveling in it." Without hesitation, George barreled through the doors, his massive form casting a shadow that swallowed the whole room. The patrons fell silent, their jovial nature snuffed out by what they beheld in the blacksmith's grim visage. "George Markley," Nathan began, a tremor of fear in his voice. "Your time has come," George growled, his hammer raised high, his muscles tense, the weight of his weapon familiar in his grip, an extension of his wrath. Wait, this ain't what it looks." "Silence," George roared. The first swing was a thunderclap, metal meeting skull with a sickening crunch. Tom collapsed without a sound, blood pooling beneath his caved-in head. Panic erupted as the men scattered, but George's pursuit was relentless, driven by visions of Tilly's gentle smile and Evelyn's bright laughter. Each strike of the hammer was a requiem for his son's stolen future. "Please no," one begged, scrambling backward on hands and knees. But mercy had fled from George's soul, alongside with his family's spirits. "Did they beg, like you do now?" George's voice was ice as his hammer found its mark again, obliterating bone and sinew without remorse. "Markley, it was Nathan's idea. I swear," another shriek, but his pleas went unheard. The cacophony of destruction filled George's ear, the pounding of his heart, crackling of bones, the splatter of blood against walls. "God have mercy on me," Nathan's final cry echoed as he cowered behind the bar. "Mercy?" George spat out the word like poison. "Tell it to my wife and children." With a final crushing blow, the deed was done. The silence returned to the saloon, broken only by George's labored breathing. He stood amidst the carnage, the hammer slick with the lifeblood of the guilty. But there was no solace, no peace found in vengeance, only the hollow victory of justice extracted. A bitter salve on the gaping wound in his soul. "Forgive me," he whispered into the void left by his family's absence. "Forgive me for not being there." But forgiveness was a faraway land, and George knew his journey had only begun. The hammer of vengeance was born with fire and blood, and its work would stretch beyond the horizon, into the darkest corners where hate dared to thrive. The moon hung heavy over Shroud, a silent witness to the grim procession that wound its way through the heart of the city. George Markley, his hands bound behind him, stumbled at the center of the mob, his blacksmith's muscles strained against the coarse ropes. The townfolk's face twisted in fury and anger, pushed him forward with angry shoves and sharp words. "Murderer," one woman screamed, her voice slicing through the night air like a blade. "Devil," spat an old man, his spit landing on George's cheeks, mixing with blood and sweat that coated his skin. "Enough," Sheriff Collins commanded, his voice gravelly with sorrow and duty. The crowd parted as they reached the ancient oak at the edge of town, its sprawling branches casting skeletal shadows on the ground. Please, George implored, his voice hoarse from screams that had long been turned into whispers. I did what any man would have done. Your family's blood weren't even cold before you took up that hammer, someone called from the back, their words laced with accusations and a hint of admiration for the brutality he had wrought. Justice, George muttered to himself, glancing down at his hands, trying to reconcile them with the instruments of vengeance they had become. It was justice. But they pushed him forward, forcing him to his knees at the base of the oak. The sheriff unspooled a length of rope from his shoulder, throwing it over a sturdy branch before securing it around George's torso, binding him to the tree. Any last words, George? The sheriff asked, an edge of regret in his tone. Tell Tilly, tell my babies. George's voice cracked, his eyes clouding with tears that he fought to hold back. That I'm sorry. God may forgive you, the shroud don't. The sheriff nodded to the man flanking him. A blacksmith apprentice, no more than 16, stepped forward, a railroad spike in his hand. His face was a mask of confusion and conflict, torn between the teachings of his trade and the desires of the mob. Sorry, Mr. Markley, the boy stammered, his eyes refusing to meet those of his former mentor. The first spike pierced flesh with a sickening crunch, pinning George's shoulder to the gnarled bark. A guttural cry escaped his lips, a sound that seemed to pull the very soul from his body. Another blow, another spike, this time through his right shoulders, and the cries melded into the night, indistinguished from the howls of wild creatures. Look at me, boy, George demanded through clenched teeth, fixing his gaze upon the apprentice. Remember this moment when you swing your hammer. Remember what hate brings. Enough talk, growled the voice George recognized as Nathan Sutherland's brother. Finish it. The boy hesitated, but the crowd's fervent chant of justice propelled his arm forward. More spikes, each a betrayal of the craft George had loved, drove into his legs, his abdomens, until the only thing holding him upright was the rough embrace of oak and the iron in his flesh. May God have mercy on all of us, George whispered, his vision blurring as the pain crescendoed into a symphony of agony. His thoughts spiraled, fleeting images of Tilly's smile, Evelyn's laughter, George Jr.'s innocent eyes. Mercy, he said bitterly, a stranger to these parts. Say hi to the devil for us, someone shouted as the final spike was driven home. George's head lolled forward, his breathing coming in ragged gasps. He could feel the life bleeding out of him, the warmth seeping away into the dirt beneath the oak. The mob's voices faded away, their thirst for vengeance quenched by the spectacle of his suffering. Forgive me, he prayed silently to the memories of his loved ones, for I have sinned. With one last shuddering breath, George Markley, the blacksmith of Shroud, slipped from the land of living, his spirit bound to the place of his execution, as if the very spikes that ended his life now tethered him to the world he could no longer touch. The moon hung low, a pale witness to the atrocity beneath the oak. George's spirit hovered, shackled by pain and injustice, over his ravaged body, a final expression of sorrowful defiance. The night air held a charged silence, broken only by the distant howl of a solitary coyote. It was in this quietude that a whisper, as if carried by the wind itself, began to form around it. George Markley, it intoned with an ethereal resonance that seemed to vibrate within his very essence. Who calls upon me? George's spectral voice was cautious, a mere wisp in the darkness. An arbiter of balance, the voice replied. A spirit of vengeance. George's translucent form gazed down, taking in the sight of his own mortal shell. He felt a surge of emotion, a tide of rage and greed threatening to drown his reason. Vengeance, he echoed hollowly, the word tasting like bile on his incorporeal tongue. Look upon yourself, blacksmith, Spirit commanded. Your hammer once forged bonds, mended breaks. Now you shall wield it to shatter the chains of hatred. A spectral hammer materialized before him, its head gleaming with an otherworldly light, the handle wrapped in leather that seemed to pulse with power. George reached out, his ghostly fingers closing around it. The context sent a jolt through his being, igniting a fire that had been extinguished with his last breath. Rise, hammer of vengeance, spirits proclaim. Strike down those who mar the world with their malice. Let the guilty know fear as they have sown it. And what of mercy? Of justice, George questioned, feeling the weight of the weapon in his hand. Mercy is for the repentant. Justice is what you will bring. A wash of determination flooded through George's spectral form. He thought of Tilly's gentle strength, Evelyn's bright future, George Jr.'s boundless curiosity, all stolen by the hands of hate. His purpose solidified like steel in a forge. Then I shall be the hammer. I shall be the tempest, George vowed, his voice ringing with newfound resolve. Go forth, hammer of vengeance, the spirit said as it began to fade from perception. Let the wicked cower at your approach. With a thunderous crack, George's spirit exploded into an array of shadows and light, merging with the night. Now unbound, he soared above Shroud, a specter of retribution. He could sense them, the malevolent hearts, the corrupt souls. They would not rest easy in their beds. They would not find peace in their wickedness. As he descended upon the town, his presence caused lanterns to flicker and dogs to whine nervously. The first of the guilty stirred in his sleep, a cold streak breaking across his brow as primal fear took hold. George raised his spectral hammer high, its arc cutting through the stillness of the night. May God have mercy on you, he whispered, and with the force that seemed to shake the very earth, George brought the hammer down, unleashing the fury of the wrong and the wrath of the just. The hammer of vengeance was born.
The myth of Arachne. Arachne is born in the land of Lydia, the daughter of a humble dyer of wool. She does not come from nobility. She is not taught by priests or temples, but what she has is skill. From a young age, her hands move with quiet certainty. Threads bend to her will, colors settle into patterns no one has ever seen before. Her weaving is not merely decorative, it's alive with detail, balance, and precision. People travel from distant towns just to watch her work. At first, they say her talent must be a gift from the goddess Athena, who is the patron of wisdom and weaving. But over time, as Arachne's reputation grows, people begin to speak differently about her. They say her skill does not resemble a gift. They say it surpasses the goddess herself. Arachne hears the rumors and does not deny them. She says plainly that she owes Athena nothing. She says if the goddess wishes to test her, she is welcome to do so. And Athena hears this. She comes to Arachne not in glory, but disguised as an old woman, leaning heavily on an old weathered staff. Her voice is calm, almost kind. She warns Arachne to show humility, to respect the gods, to withdraw her challenge. But Arachne refuses. She says skill should stand on its own. She says truth does not bow to authority. And then in that moment, the disguise falls away. Athena reveals herself, radiant and severe, and the true contest now begins. Two looms are set side by side. Athena weaves first. Her tapestry is perfect in structure and form. It shows the gods in all their splendor, majestic, orderly, unchallenged. Mortals who defy them are punished. And the message is clear. Power rules, and rebellion leads only to ruin. And then Arachne weaves. Her hands move swiftly, confidently, without any hesitation. And her tapestry tells a different story. She shows the gods as they truly behave. Zeus disguising himself to deceive mortal women. Gods abusing power, betraying trust, breaking the very rules they demand others obey. There is no distortion in this, no exaggeration, only accuracy. When the tapestries are finished, the difference is unmistakable. Athena's work is truly flawless, but Arachne's is flawless as well. But Arachne's tells a truth that Athena cannot tolerate. The goddess inspects the weaving closely, looking for an error, but of course she would find none. And in that moment, Athena understands that she is not lost because of weakness, but because of honesty. Enraged, she tears Arachne's tapestry apart. She strikes the girl, destroying the work that exposed the gods. In despair, Arachne collapses. In some tellings, she attempts to end her life, unable to bear the loss of her art and her dignity. But Athena would stop her, not out of mercy, but to deliver judgment. She transforms Arachne into a spider. Her body shrinks, her limbs twist, her fingers become legs, her loom becomes instinct. Finally, the goddess speaks again, in her true form. Arachne will weave forever, but she will never again be praised. Her work will be hidden in corners and shadows. Her name will be remembered, but her voice will be gone. And so the spider weaves, thread after thread, pattern after pattern, silent, persistent, unacknowledged. The gods retain their authority, and the truth remains, but small, overlooked, and easy to dismiss. And the world moves on. The myth of Asar, death as continuity. Asar does not rule the dead because he died. He rules because he stayed in the underworld. In the Kemetic belief system, death is not an end state. It is a process transition. Asar is not a god who escaped death. He is the god who accepted its role and made it functional. He does not return to rule the living. He does not seek his throne back. He does not even seek to avenge himself. Instead, he becomes the access that allows life to continue without him. When Set murders Asar, it's not just fratricide, it is a disruption. Order is broken, not by chaos alone, but also by the removal of continuity. Set does not resurrect Asar to reclaim his crown. She restores him enough to anchor the system. Asar now becomes something new. Not just a king of Kemet, not a ruler of men, but a ruler of after. And this is not defeat. This is cosmic specialization. He is the first god to stay dead. Many gods die. Asar is the first to understand that staying dead matters. He does not haunt the living. He does not walk the earth in disguise. He does not demand worship through fear. He sits in the duat, presiding over judgment, not as punishment, but as measurement. The heart is weighed, not for sin, but for balance. Death becomes a gate, not a wall. In Asarian beliefs, death is not exile. It is simply relocation. You are not erased. You are not trapped. You are not rewarded for conquest. You are assessed for alignment. Asar does not ask what you owned. He does not care what you conquered. He asks whether you lived your life in harmony with Ma'at. Continuity requires balance, not greatness. And this is why Asar is dangerous to empires. Empires require fear of death to function. Asar removes that leverage. If death is not annihilation, if it is not punishment, if it is not chaos, then rulers lose their greatest threat. Asar makes people harder to control. Now, Horus becomes the future, but his father Asar is the foundation. Horus avenges. Horus fights. Horus rules the living world. Asar does none of that. He assures that when Horus fails, when dynasties fall, when names are forgotten, existence itself does not collapse. Hades processes the dead. Hela houses him. Asar connects him. He is not the god of resurrection fantasies. He is the god of systems that survive loss. Death does not end in the Kemetic thought. It guarantees that life can begin again, without pretending that nothing was lost. Pele, goddess of fire, creation, and jealousy. Before the islands had names, before stone remembered the shape of mountains, before land dared to rise above the sea, there was only movement. The ocean whirled endlessly, dark and conscious, and within it traveled a force that refused stillness. Her name was Pele. She was not born in one place. She emerged again and again, from flame, from hunger, from the deep furnace of the world. Pele was fire with intention. Her hair flowed like smoke caught in the wind, black and endless, carrying embers in its wake. Her skin glowed as if lit from within, sometimes warm as sunlit stone, sometimes red hot with fury. Her eyes were not gentle. They burned with the knowing of something older than fear. Where Pele walked, the earth opened. She carried fire not as destruction, but as becoming. Lava spilled from her footsteps, slow and unstoppable, reshaping the world without apology. The sea hissed when she approached, retreating from her heat, recoiling from her will. But Pele was not alone in the world. Beneath the waves, where light dies and pressure rules, dwelled her sister, Namaka. Namaka was the ocean given thought. Her skin shimmered like moonlight on black water. Her hair moved as currents move, slow, heavy, inexorable. Her eyes were deep, ancient, and cold with memory as only the sea could have. Where Pele burned with emotion, Namaka endured with patience. She ruled the deep places, the trenches, the crushing silence, where nothing escapes gravity or consequence. And she resented her sister. When Pele arrived, the sea was pushed back. Where fire rose, water was displaced. Each new land Pele created was a wound in Namaka's domain. To Namaka, Pele was reckless, too loud, too hungry, too disruptive. To Pele, Namaka was suffocating, a force that drowned passion, swallowed movement, and demanded stillness. They were not enemies born of hatred. They were sisters born of opposition. Fire that must move, water that must contain. When Pele first settled, she believed she could build a home. She dug into the earth, carving chambers for her flame, shaping mountains from molten stone. She believed the land would hold her. But Namaka would not allow it. With crashing waves and rising tides, Namaka answered. She flooded Pele's home, cooled her lava, shattered her growing islands, and dragged them back into the sea. Storms followed Pele wherever she lingered too long. Island after island, Pele was driven away. Each retreat hardened her. Each loss sharpened her jealousy, not of her sister's power, but of her sister's stability. Namaka already had a kingdom. The ocean accepted her without resistance. Pele had to fight for every inch of ground. And still, she moved forward. She crossed the sea again and again, chased by waves, hunted by storms, carrying her fire across the dark. What humans would later call volcanoes are the scars of this journey, places where Pele tried to stay and was forced to flee. And then at last, she reached Hawaii, the youngest island, the strongest spine of the stone. Here, the earth did not break beneath her. It answered. Pele dug deep, deeper than she ever had before. She struck the mantle of the world itself, tapping into the planet's heart. Fire surged upward and stayed. Namaka became, again, furious. Waves slammed against the stone. Storms tore at the land, but this time the land endured. Fire and water clashed, not to destroy each other, but to define their boundaries. And Pele remained. She claimed the volcano as her body and the island as her spine. She did not rule from the sea or the sky. She ruled from beneath. The people felt her presence in trembling ground, in glowing rivers of lava, in the fertile soil that followed destruction. Pele was not cruel, but she was emotional. She loved fiercely. And when she loved, she gave warmth, growth, and abundance. Forests returned when the lava had cooled. Life sprang that appeared to be dead. The people learned to honor her, to respect her fire, to speak her name with care. Because Pele was also jealous. When she was disrespected, when love was betrayed, when humans forgot the land was alive, her anger rose. Lava flowed without mercy. Villages vanished beneath molten stone. It was not punishment, it was correction. Pele did not destroy out of hatred. She destroyed because stagnation is a lie. Fire clears what no longer serves, and creation requires sacrifice. Namaka watched from the deep, no longer chasing her sister, but never forgiving her. The ocean still presses against the land, testing it, reminding Pele that nothing remains unchallenged forever. They are still bound. Fire rises, water answers. The world is shaped between them. Even now, Pele sleeps beneath the islands. Not gone, not silent, but waiting. Because fire never truly rests. The Shape of Death, a myth reading. Before death had a name, it had no face. There was no figure waiting in the dark, no voice calling from beyond, no blade raised in judgment. There was only absence. The earliest humans did not imagine death as an enemy. They experienced it as an event, as a sudden cold, as inevitable as night. A body stopped moving. A fire went out. A voice was never heard again. Death did not arrive, it happened. And because it had no intention, it inspired no image. As civilizations formed, something changed. When humans learned to build cities, they also learned to remember. And memory demanded explanation. If life had meaning, then its ending had to as well. So death became a place before it became a person, a realm, a crossing, a river, a shadowed road. In many early traditions, death was gentle, not merciful, but calm. It came like sleep. It came like dusk. The dead were not punished, they were processed, guided, measured, prepared. Death was not here to hurt you, it was there to receive you. But the world grew crowded. Empires expanded, wars multiplied, famine followed power wherever it went. And death stopped feeling distant. It moved into homes, into streets, into churches. When people began dying by the thousands, death could no longer be abstract. It needed a face. The turning point came when death became visible, not as a myth, but a spectacle. Plague emptied cities. Fields filled with bodies instead of crops. Entire generations vanished between seasons. And suddenly, death was no longer rare. It was constant. When something becomes constant, humans stop asking if and start asking when. And when fear demands explanation, authority provides answers. This is when death learned to judge. The end of life was no longer neutral. It was deserved. It was earned. Avoided if you obeyed. The dead were no longer simply gone, they were sorted, saved or condemned, accepted or judged, and judgment requires a judge. So humanity dressed death, not in flesh but in symbol, a skeleton, because beneath every difference, all humans look the same. A robe, because authority hides itself, because power never shows its hand. And a blade, not a sword of war, but a tool of harvest, the scythe. Because death does not fight you, it collects you. The Grim Reaper did not appear all at once. It assembled, piece by piece, century by century. Artists painted what people feared. Priests preached what people needed to hear. And death stepped forward, not as an idea, but as a presence. Tall, silent, watching. It did not rage, it did not plead, it waited. And this figure was not born from ancient scripture. It was born from trauma, from watching neighbors vanish overnight, from mass graveyards blessed in a hurry, from doorbells ringing so often they lost meaning. The Grim Reaper is not death itself. It is humanity's attempt to look death in the eye. And once death had a face, it could be spoken to. appealed to, mocked, or feared. Stories emerged of death being tricked, outrun, delayed. Not because humans believed they could win, but because they needed to imagine resistance. Even in myth, death always wins, but sometimes it listens. As centuries passed, the Grim Reaper followed humanity forward, into books, into theater, into art, then into films, then into comics, then into jokes. Because when something terrifies you long enough, eventually you laugh. Not because it is funny, but because laughter is controlled. Thoth, god of cosmic structure, language, and recorded reality. Thoth is not a god who rules through force. He does not conquer, he does not command armies, he does not demand worship through fear. Thoth governs something far more dangerous. He governs understanding. In Kemetic thought, the universe does not function because it's powerful. It functions because it is ordered, because it can be measured, because it can be named, because it can be remembered. And Thoth is the intelligence that makes that possible. Now, Thoth is known by many names, each reflecting a different aspect of his function. In Kemet, he is Jehudi, a name tied to intelligence, speech, and precision. He is called Lord of Divine Words, he who reckons time, and scribe of the gods. To the Greeks, he becomes Hermes, and later Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great mind. In esoteric traditions, he is not treated as a personality at all, but as a principle of intelligence. Sometimes he appears with the head of an ibis bird, sometimes as a baboon. These are not aesthetic choices. The ibis represents calculation, balance, and precision. The baboon represents observation, memory, and lunar rhythm. Thoth's forms are not symbolic masks, they are functional avatars. Now, this is what Thoth actually governs. Thoth does not create the universe. He does not destroy it. He does not rule it. He makes it legible. Thoth governs language as a creative force, writing as memory made permanent, mathematics as cosmic truth, time as a measurable system, law as recorded balance. In Kemetic cosmology, chaos is not defeated by violence, it is stabilized by Ma'at, the principle of truth and balance. And Thoth is Ma'at's recorder. He does not decide what is true, he ensures that truth is accurately accounted for, and that distinction matters. Thoth and the structure of reality. In myth, Thoth is often present during moments of dispute among gods. When Horus and Set battle for kingship, Thoth mediates. When divine law must be clarified, Thoth records. When order must be restored, Thoth calculates. He is not neutral because he is indifferent. He is neutral because structure must be impartial. Reality does not care who you are, only whether balance is maintained. Thoth embodies that principle. Now, the weighing of the heart ceremony. One of Thoth's most important roles appears in the judgment of the dead. When a soul enters the hall of Ma'at, the heart is weighed against the feather of truth. Anubis conducts the ritual. Osiris presides, but Thoth records the outcome. He does not judge the soul, he does not punish it, he does not save it. He ensures the process is correct. In this moment, Thoth represents the idea that justice is not emotional, it is procedural. Cosmic awareness is not mercy or cruelty, it is accuracy. Language is power. Now, to understand Thoth, we must understand how ancient cultures viewed language. Words were not labels, they were forces. To know the true name of a thing was to have power over it. To write something was to make it real beyond the moment. Thoth is the god of that threshold. Speech becomes spell. Writing becomes law. Memory becomes continuity. This is why Thoth is associated with magic, not illusion, but as applied knowledge. Magic is simply understanding reality well enough to manipulate it. And his influence beyond Kemet. Thoth does not remain confined to Kemet. Through cultural contact, he becomes Hermes. Through Hermeticism, he becomes the universal mind. Through alchemy, he becomes the architect of transformation. Through philosophy, he becomes intellect itself. By the time he appears as Hermes Trismegistus, Thoth is no longer just a god. He is the idea that consciousness can understand the universe it inhabits, and that idea survives every empire. The Book of Thoth. Now, Thoth's most famous relic is not a weapon or a crown. It is fittingly a book. And the Book of Thoth represents total knowledge, language that can command nature, words that can bend reality. Myth warns that those who read it without wisdom lose themselves, not because knowledge is evil, but because unprepared awareness destabilizes identity. This is a recurring pattern in Thoth mythology. Knowledge is dangerous, but power without structure destroys the holder. This is why Thoth is not a king. Thoth never rules a kingdom. This is not an omission, it is a statement. Kings come and go. Structures remain. Thoth does not sit on a throne because reality itself sits on his function. Empires collapse, languages die, but mathematics persist. Law persists. Memory persists. And thus, so does Thoth. In modern thinking, Thoth appears as the architect of intellect, the symbol of recorded reality, the reminder that understanding carries responsibility. He is not faith. He is not belief. He is the mechanism between both. Thoth does not ask to be worshipped. He asks only to be understood. He stands where knowledge becomes permanent, where speech shapes reality, where truth is measured instead of declared. As long as humans seek to understand the universe rather than to dominate it, Thoth remains present, not as a ruler, but as the mind that keeps the universe legible. Tiamat, the first mother of monsters. Before there were gods with names, before temples, before prayers, before fear knew how to kneel, there was Tiamat. Not born, not created, not crowned. She was. She was the saltwater ocean before shorelines existed, the dark womb before light learned how to speak, the roar beneath creation, where nothing had yet decided what it wanted to be. Tiamat was not evil. She was not kind. She was unfiltered existence. In the beginning, there was only mingling. Fresh water and salt. Apsu and Tiamat. Stillness and motion folding into one another. From this union came the younger gods. Loud, restless, impatient. They shouted inside the silence. They stirred the waters. They forgot that they were guests inside a body older than time. And the old gods began to ache. Apsu wanted silence back. He planned destruction not out of cruelty, but out of exhaustion. The young gods killed him first. They struck the quiet father down, and the waters trembled. Tiamat felt it. Not as grief alone, but as betrayal. Creation had turned on its source. Something ancient woke up in her depths. Not rage, not vengeance. Correction. The sea does not scream when it floods a city. It simply returns things to where they belong. Tiamat did not declare war. She responded. She gave birth again. This time, not to gods who would forget her. This time she birthed monsters. Serpents with venom instead of prayers. Dragons with eyes like eclipses. Creatures shaped by fear itself. Not because she loved chaos, but because chaos was truth before order learned how to lie. A consort forged for war, and the heavens shook. The younger gods panicked. They had learned how to rule, but not how to face their mother. They searched for a weapon. They searched for a hero. They chose Marduk. Not because he was the oldest, not because he was the wisest, but because he promised control. Marduk did not face Tiamat as a son. He faced her as a system. He brought nets to trap the infinite winds, to suffocate the ocean. Words to define what should never have been named. And when he struck her down, creation didn't cheer, it split. From her body, the world was built. Her ribs became the sky. Her blood became the rivers. Her bones became the foundation of order. Civilization rose on a corpse, and all the gods called it victory. But listen closely. Chaos was never destroyed. It was never dissected. Tiamat did not vanish. She was repurposed. Every storm that ignores your prayers, every flood that erases borders, every moment where systems collapse under their own arrogance, that is her breath moving through the cracks. Tiamat is not a villain. She is the reminder that order is temporary, that control is borrowed, that creation always comes from something older, darker, and deeper than comfort allows. She is the mother civilization buried alive, and she is still dreaming. The gods fear chaos because it reminds them of what they were before they learned how to rule, that they were simply aspects of the universe, no greater or lesser than any other creation. Wadjet, the flame on the brow of kings. Before crowns were forged, before thrones were carved from stone, before kings learned how to speak like gods, power already had a guardian. In the marshlands of the Delta, where water hides depth and reed whispers secrets older than language, Wadjet watched. She did not rule a city. She did not demand temples. She did not walk among the people. She waited. The gods knew chaos does not always arrive as war. Sometimes it comes as doubt, sometimes as betrayal, sometimes as a ruler who forgets why he was chosen. And when the world needed authority that could not be questioned, they did not send a storm, they did not send an army, they sent a warning. From the papyrus marsh the cobra rose, not to strike, but to be seen. Wadjet coiled herself into fire and gold, her body becoming the living sigil of sovereignty. She climbed the crown of the king, not as decoration, but as a contract. Rule in balance, she whispered, without sound or burn. From that day forward, no true king stood alone. When enemies crept through shadows, Wadjet's eyes opened. When traitors smiled too easily, her hood flared. When foreign kings tested the borders of Kemet, they felt heat on their faces before steel ever touched their skin. She did not chase invaders across deserts. She did not roar like Sekhmet. She did not judge like Anubis. She simply ended threats. Quickly, precisely, without ceremony. Pharaohs learned this truth early. The crown was not theirs. The throne was not theirs. Even the land was borrowed. What belonged to them was the responsibility of being worthy of the cobra. For when a ruler spoke falsely, Wadjet tightened. When the ruler ruled for himself, she leaned forward. And when a ruler forgot Ma'at entirely, forgot balance, forgot duty, forgot the people, the flame on the brow burned hot enough to be the last thing his enemies never saw. Thus Wadjet endured, not in stories told to children, but in silent warnings to kings, not as a goddess who walked the earth, but as a presence that ended reigns. Even now, long after crowns have turned dust, her symbol remains, a reminder. Power is never safe, authority is never passive, and true sovereignty always comes with a blade already drawn. Wadjet still watches, and she never misses. Adiriel, the fallen angel of divine physiology and cosmic awareness. In the celestial order, not all angels were created to sing. Some were created to understand. Adiriel belonged to this second lineage. Not a herald, not a throne guardian, not a voice in the endless choir. He was an observer. Among the earliest structures of the heavens, Adiriel was assigned a role few others could fulfill. He studied not the stars, but the framework that allowed stars to exist. Not worlds, but the architecture that held worlds together. He examined the mechanisms of consciousness, the relationship between awareness and form, the way divinity expressed itself through structure. Where other angels reflected glory, Adiriel examined design. Adiriel's form reflected his function. His physique was dense, deliberate, and stable. Strength without ornament, power without display. Each muscle existed with cohesion. Each wing functioned as an instrument of perception. To Adiriel, the body was not a vessel. It was a language, a system through which intelligence moved. Over time, Adiriel reached a realization that would later be called dangerous. That awareness does not descend through command, it emerges through comprehension. That obedience deserves order, but understanding transforms it. This distinction marked the beginning of his divergence. Adiriel did not rebel. He did not gather followers. He did not challenge authority. He asked questions. Why consciousness was restricted, why angels were forbidden to fully perceive themselves, why knowledge was segmented instead of integrated. In celestial hierarchy, curiosity was tolerated, completion was not. The moment of the fall did not arrive as a punishment, it arrived as awareness. Adiriel achieved full integration of his own structure. In understanding himself completely, he crossed a boundary that had never meant to be crossed. Not a boundary of space, a boundary of permission. When Adiriel fell, his wings did not burn. They remained intact. This alone set him apart from other fallen figures. His descent was not destruction, it was removal. He no longer fit within the limitations of the system that had created him. On the lower planes, Adiriel did not decay. His form stabilized. His awareness expanded. He perceived time not as a sequence, but as a layered presence. He perceived matter not as inert, but as responsive. He did not see himself as fallen. He saw himself as unbound. To humanity, Adiriel would later appear as myth, a silent winged figure. Powerful, observing, never ruling. He did not tempt, he did not command, he waited. Later traditions struggled to categorize him. Some called him dangerous, others called him corrupt, many called him prideful, and these labels served a purpose. They discouraged imitation, because Adiriel represented a truth institutions could not allow, that awareness is not granted, it is developed. In mythic terms, Adiriel occupies a liminal role. Not a ruler, not a destroyer, not a savior. He is a threshold, the embodiment of the question, what happens when divine beings fully understand themselves? Adiriel appears only to those already standing at the edge, to scholars who sense fractures in doctrines, to mystics who feel the limits of belief, to creators who recognize intelligence embedded in form. He does not teach, he clarifies. Adiriel remains fallen only by definition. In function, he is something entirely different. A witness, a reminder, a warning that knowledge, once integrated, cannot be unlearned, and awareness, once achieved, changes alignment forever. Akasha of Kemet, the queen who did not die. Now this story takes place in ancient Kemet, in an age before history had hardened to dates. An age where empires were still learning what they were, learning their power. Kemet was rising, pulling itself away from the older, darker traditions, blood rites, ancestral consumption, magic fed by death rather than memory. At the heart of this transformation stood a woman from beyond its borders, Akasha. She was not born of Kemet. She came from the lands of Sumer, Mesopotamia, where the first cities were built, where queens were not ornaments but institutions themselves. When she was wed to Enkill, the king of Kemet, the marriage was political, but the power she brought was real. Akasha did not rule from behind the throne. She was the throne's spine. Known as the queen of beauty and order, Akasha was spoken of as a devastating beauty, not a fragile beauty, not a decorative beauty, but a regal beauty. Her skin was dark and luminous, kissed by the sun of the south. Her body bore the symmetry of deliberate design. Her hair was worn in intricate braids, woven with gold, beads, and ritual markings, each braid a language of status, lineage, and intent. When she walked, people noticed. When she spoke, people listened. And when she ruled, things changed. Under Akasha and Enkill, Kemet began to cleanse itself. Cannibalism was outlawed. Blood sorcery was dismantled. The old shadow priesthoods were dragged into the light. And civilization mixed enemies along its way. Enter the witch sisters. Among those enemies were two ancient sisters, Māra and Makari. Now their mother had been a very powerful witch, one of the old order, and when she died, the sisters followed their ancestral rites, preparing to consume her body, her brain, her flesh, in order to absorb her knowledge and power. To them, this was sacred. This was lineage. To Akasha, this was barbarism, and this was a crime. They were arrested, not gently, and they were beaten, dragged before the queen. And Akasha did not show them mercy. She humiliated them publicly. She had them punished, scarred, and cast down, not as witches, but simply as criminals themselves. Now this was not cruelty. This was policy, and the sisters never forgave her for that. The summoning of Amil. Now Māra and Makari retreated into exile, into the old places where these new laws did not reach them. And there, in rage and humiliation, they summoned Amil. Not a god, not a demon in the Christian sense, a blood spirit, ancient, feral, drawn to death, thriving in the cracks between life and decay. They did not ask Amil to kill Akasha. They asked him to torment her, to haunt her days, to fracture her sleep, to make her doubt her own mind. And Amil agreed. And the harassment began. Akasha began to suffer. Shadows moved when they shouldn't. Voices whispered without mouths. Objects shifted. Blood dreams plagued her sleep. And she knew what this was. An attempt at possession. A fight for her soul. And she resisted it. She resisted the spirit with her will alone, refusing to allow it to claim her. But Amil was ancient, powerful, and patient. And so he lingered. He fed on his proximity to her. The waiting was his gift. And then came the assassination. Again, civilization makes many enemies, and she had her share. And one day came the blades. An assassination attempt, political, coordinated, inevitable. Enkill was struck first. Akasha was then stabbed. As her blood spilled onto the stone, her body began to fail, and thus her soul rose. And that is the moment that everything broke. As Akasha crossed the threshold of death, Emil followed her, and this spirit latched onto her departing soul, not out of love, not out of design, but out of instinct, that of a predator. And when Akasha's soul tried to leave her body, Emil pulled it back in. They fell together, the spirit and the queen, back into the flesh. Her heart restarted, her wounds sealed, her blood changed, and Akasha awoke. Not alive, not dead, but bound. The first vampire queen. She arose as something new. Her senses shattered their limits. Her hunger was no longer her own. Her blood burned with foreign will. Emil was now fused to her, feeding through her, whispering through instinct, bound permanently for all time. Akasha had not chosen immortality. She had simply been denied death. The turning of Enkill. Enkill lay there dying, and Akasha refused to lose him. So she fed him her blood. And then Enkill died. And then horrifically, he rose. And in that moment, vampirism was born. Not from ambition, but from love and refusal to endure loss. The judgment on the witches. Akasha and Enkill hunted the sisters, sparing no expense. Maharet was found, and she was spared, but mutilated. Her eyes were destroyed, and she was cast into an endless exile. Makari was driven mad, sent wandering, carrying the seed of legacy in her, her survival ensuring the truth would never fully die. The old magic was not destroyed, but it was scattered. The martyrdom. Akasha did not seek godhood. She paid for reform with her eternity. She paid for civilization itself with her soul. She became the mother of monsters against her will, bound forever to a parasite born of ancient cruelty and modern resistance. She was not evil by origin. She is what happens when a woman stands between the old world and the future demands blood. The myth of Mot and Baal, when death devours the storm. Now, in Canaanite Ugaritic belief systems, Baal is the god of rain and thunder, the pulse of fertile power moving throughout the world. He is not merely worshipped, he is anticipated. When Baal walks the high places, the earth responds. Fields soften beneath his feet, seeds swell in their sleep, the air thickens with promise. When his voice rolls across the sky, clouds gather without command, and rain follows as if it remembers something it had almost forgotten. Life does not just obey Baal, it recognizes him. He is the storm that arrives when the land has waited long enough, the rhythm that turns dust back into soil. Kings praise him not for conquest, but because the people eat when he is near. Baal is abundance made audible. And far below, where no rain ever falls, Mot waits. Mot is the god of death. Not a ruler seated on a throne, not a judge waiting hearts. Mot is consumption. He does not govern the dead. He does not organize them. He does not give them a purpose or rest. He opens his mouth, vast and endless, and the dead pass into him as grain into a mill. In Mot's realm, there is no light. No growth, no becoming. There is only hunger, patience, grinding and eternal. Bones are stripped, names are dissolved, even memory is chewed down to nothing. Death in Mot's keeping is not an ending, it is being eaten. And when Baal's reign grows generous, when life sprouts too far and too freely, Mot's hunger deepens, because abundance always calls to appetite. When Baal establishes his palace, the sky changes. Rain no longer comes in hesitation. It falls freely, generously, as if the heavens themselves have been persuaded to trust the earth again. Thunder rolls not as a warning, but as reassurance, and the land drinks deeply. Crops grow heavy with grain. Vines sag under their own abundance. Rivers swell past their banks, no longer cautious, no longer restrained. And life spreads outward, unchecked, not because Baal demands it, but because nothing stops it. And far below, where no water ever reaches, Mot begins to stir. He feels the weight of growth pressing against the boundaries of the world. He senses abundance piling upon itself, unconsumed, unbroken. Hunger is not emotion for Mot, it is response. Excess must be eaten. Silence must answer noise. From the dry depths beneath the roots of the world, Mot notices the rain, and he speaks. Not with anger, not with envy, but in clarity. A message rises from below, not a threat, not a challenge, but a summons older than the argument. Come down, Mot says, descend into my mouth. Let me swallow you as all things are swallowed. And this was no insult. This was not triumph. This was merely inevitability. Baal hears the call and does not laugh. He does not strike the sky with thunder. He does not gather the clouds into weapons. He only understands. Life has grown loud. Life has grown full. And death is now hungry. The descent. And so now Baal descends into the realm of Mot. Not through a gate, not through a door, but through a withholding of the world. The sky above him thins. The air loses weight. The sound of thunder fades. Not suddenly, but as if it were being pulled away, strand by strand. Color drains from the horizon. What was once distant becomes depth. This is not another land. It is beneath land. Baal passes below roots, below stone, below the memory of water. The ground grows dry, then brittle, then empty of all scent and softness. Here, nothing waits to grow again. This is Mot's domain. It is not fire, it is not shadow. It is absence made vast. The air tastes of dust and old endings. The ground does not echo footsteps because nothing has ever lingered long enough to leave a sound behind. This is a place where time does not move forward, it only finishes. And Mot is there. He is not shaped like a king. He does not sit upon a throne. Mot is hunger given form. His body is wide and endless. His mouth a darkness without edge or bottom. His throat is a narrowing of all things. Within him are the remains of gods and men alike. Ground down, undistinguishable, unfinished meals of eternity. He does not glare at Baal. He does not rise. He simply opens. There is no battle at this threshold. No thunder breaks the silence. No lightning dares follow Baal here. Mot does not need to overpower. He only needs to receive it. Baal steps forward and Mot closes, and Baal is thus consumed. And above, the world responds. Rain stops. Clouds thin and scatter like breath in cold air. Rivers shrink back to their banks. Then further still. The soil hardens. Fields crack open, not in protest, but in quiet failure. The land does not scream. Without Baal, life does not collapse violently. It begins to shrink. Leaves curl inward. Seeds sleep and do not wake. What once reached outward now pulls back, conserving what little warmth remains. Life does not rage against death. It simply waits. And now we have life without rain. Time passes, not as moments counted, but as absence accumulating. The gods wait, watching the sky for signs that do not. Clouds gather out of habit, then thin and disappear. Thunder remembers its old path and finds nothing to travel along. Days lengthen, and seasons hesitate. But still nothing changes. Altars stand unused, prayers rise and fall back unheard. The land learns the weight of silence and carries it poorly. Baal does not return, and Mot does not speak of it. He does not announce victory, he does not claim dominion, he does not mark the moment as special. Below the world, Mot continues exactly as he always has. He eats. The dead passed into him without ceremony. Gods, mortals, creatures of breath and root alike. Everything that reaches its end is taken in and broken down. No name is remembered longer than it takes to deserve, because death does not require acknowledgement. It does not need triumph, it does not need witness. It only needs consumption. And so the world above learns something it did not know, that life can disappear without being noticed. But the thing that consumes it, life can disappear without being noticed by the thing that consumes it. But Anat refuses the stillness. Now Anat is the goddess of war and vitality, the blood-bright sister of Baal, known by many names. She who loves battle, she who delights in slaughter, the maiden who breaks armies. Where Baal brings rain, Anat brings motion. Where he nourishes, she cuts. Life does not only grow, it fights to remain. Anat is not patient, she is not tempered, she is the force that answers silence with violence. When Baal does not return, she notices the world's thinning breath, and she sees fields rise and fall. Rivers retreat, the land's bending inward on itself like a body conserving heat. And she searches for him, not gently, not cautiously. She tears through the borders of the world until there is nowhere left to look but below. And there she finds Mot. Mot does not greet her. He is not threatened. He does not flee. He opens his mouth as he always has. And Anat does not hesitate. She does not negotiate. She does not ask for balance. She does not respect necessity. She attacks even death itself. She strikes Mot with blade and fury, hacking him apart as one would butcher a carcass. She cuts him down, grinds his remains, scatters them across the land, into rivers, into soil, into the very dust that once starved. She burns him, she crushes him, she sows his pieces like seed. This is not wisdom, this is flat out rage. It is grief given muscle and steel, and for that moment, it works. With Mot scattered and broken, the world hesitates. Nothing rushes back all at once. Then slowly something shifts. The sky darkens, not with storm but with memory. Clouds begin to gather where air had forgotten how. The first drops of rain fall uncertainly, as if testing whether the earth still knows how to receive water. And the land answered. Cracked soil softens, seeds long dormant stir beneath the surface. Rivers remember their cousins and begin to move forward again. Thin at first, then fuller and sure. And Baal returns, not in fire and not in conquest. He rises like rain returning to parched land, not new, not changed, but resumed. Thunder follows him again, rolling across the sky like voices claiming victory in its range. Lightning traces old paths, illuminating fields that had nearly given up hope. Life surges back into motion. Green spreads, crops lift their heads, and the world exhales. Baal walks around the living once more, and abundance follows as if it always had, not because he commanded it, but because his presence restores a rhythm that had previously been interrupted. For a time, it seems as though death had been defeated. The gods rejoice, the lands themselves flourish, and the cycle feels broken. And beneath the celebration, something stirs. Because Mot does not stay scattered. Death does not remain undone. What Anat destroyed was not death itself, but its form. And slowly, inevitably, Mot begins to gather again. Hunger reforms, absence thickens. The quiet below the world grows heavy with promise. Death has been wounded, but death has not been erased. And for Baal, for all his thunder, he knows this. Below the renewed world, something begins to gather. Not suddenly, not loudly. There's no scream, no thunder, no omen warning the living. Death does not announce its recovery. It does not demand recognition. It simply reforms. From the dust where Anat scattered him, Mot begins to draw himself together again. Grains rot, leaves fall back into soil, bones settle beneath the earth. Hunger, long delayed, resumes its work. Mot does not remember pain. He does not carry anger. What was broken will never be destroyed, only disappeared. Slowly, this absence deepens again. The silence between the world thickens. The great mouth that once closed around Baal opens once more, patient, unchanged. Death has finished being interrupted, and Mot rises. They struggle, not with weapons, not with storm or teeth, but with presence itself. Baal brings rain, Mot brings drought. Baal restores, while Mot consumes. Neither can destroy the other. Life cannot exist without death to make room for it. Death cannot consume everything without ending its own purpose. And the struggle resolves the only way it could, not through victory, through limit. Baal will fall into Mot's mouth again, and he will rise again, and rain will return, and drought will follow. The land will flourish, and then it will be empty. This is not cruelty, this is in fact order. Mot does not rule the world. Baal does not escape him. They simply take turns. Now, as we've seen, Hades administers death. Hell keeps it. Osiris structures it. Izanami warns against crossing it. Savitri outwalks it, and Erishkigal stays within it. Mot consumes, and Baal proves that every living thing must learn that you are not immortal, you will not be erased, you are not seasonal, because life does not win by escaping death. It wins by returning every time death finishes eating.